Signs at the Whaling National Historic Park in New Bedford over the weekend as part of a coordinated demonstration at parks across the country. CAI's Jeanette Barnes reports the protest announced the firing of park employees as part of the Trump administration job cuts.
At the New Bedford Park, people held homemade signs and sang a few protest songs played on a phone. One hand-drawn poster featured the head of Smokey the Bear and the words, "Only you can prevent fascism." Protester Naomi Boak says the parks won't be the same this summer without a full complement of interpreters.
You will get something from your visit, but you will not get the kind of understanding and emotional connection that a park ranger can give a visitor.
She says 15 to 20 people joined the local demonstration. Sources suggest that either one or two employees have been fired from the New Bedford Park. CAI has not been able to confirm that number.
That's Jeanette Barnes for Connecting the Commonwealth. The National Park Service do not respond to questions for this story. We're at 43 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include CFP, Certified Financial Planner Professionals, committed to acting in their clients' best interests. Learn more at letsmakeaplan.org. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Hey, Mr. Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow with special coverage of Mayor Michelle Wu's appearance in Congress, talking about Boston's immigration policies in D.C. That could be some fireworks there. Plus, Judge Nancy Gertner, Michael Curry from the NAACP, and a special edition of Ask the Attorney General from 1 to 2 tomorrow. Andrea Campbell will be here with us. And on Thursday, unfortunately, not here, but Jim and I are going to get to talk to Peter Wolf from the Jay Goss Band about his really great new memoir.
That's great.
And Friday, back at the Boston Public Library, Gina McCarthy, who used to run the EPA for Barack Obama, she'll be here to talk about the depth of the damage done to the EPA under Donald Trump, and also Marty Barron, former editor of the Boston Globe and also editor of the Washington Post before Jeff Bezos kind of went off the deep end, as it were. One more thing, Jim.
What is it?
On Monday, I'm sorry to have to announce this, but once again, Jim has prevailed. His twice-annual crusade against changing the clocks. Good morning, Jim.
You know, the Senate voted a couple of years ago 100-0 in front of this, and Nancy Pelosi killed it. Otherwise,
I know.
we'd have
that was
daylight
terrible.
saving
Why
year
did she
round.
kill it, Jim?
Well, actually, it turns out the Senate didn't even know they were voting on it, so that's one of the reasons it
Okay.
passed. So in the past 6 weeks, the second Trump administration has threatened mass deportation, upended tens of thousands of lives of federal employees. 2 of them who were fired are going to be with us in the noon hour, by the way, and frozen funding for developing nations abroad, imposed crippling tariffs on our friends and allies, not to mention on us. And who can forget his Oval Office bully session with the leader of war-torn Ukraine, who used to be an ally, now he's freezing military assistance and seemingly siding with the aggressor in the war, the murderous Vladimir Putin. Trump's strategy, if you can call it that, has been to flood the zone everywhere. Steve Bannon came up with that all at once. And tonight he'll do it again, taking center stage in front of both houses of Congress. And I assume to set the stage for some of the priorities still to come. We know by now what a Trump speech looks like. A lot of lies, a lot of blustering, ad hominem attacks on people he personally does not like, which is almost everybody, belittling those he disagree with. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. Are you tuning in tonight? It's at 9 o'clock, which is really late,
why
I
do they
should
do
say.
it at 8 o'clock?
I don't know. So are you tuning in as an act of, civil responsibility, or is it actually a defense of our democracy to tune out the noise and get the facts later? Whether you support Donald Trump or not, will you be watching, and why? The number is 877-301-8970. Okay, Marjorie, don't dance on this one like you often do. You watching or not?
If I did not do this for a living, I would not be watching.
Is that true?
Yeah, because, why watch this guy go on and lie for like an hour and a half, and watch all the Republicans get up and clap at every single thing he says, and the Democrats kind of sitting there. A lot of the women are going to wear pink outfits. I don't know how effective that's going to be, but just it's not going to be it's going to be like watching Fox News. I mean, after 15 minutes, I can't take it, and I turn it off. So if I weren't doing this for a living, I'd read about it afterwards. But since I do this for a living, yes, I will be tuning in, Jim. How about you?
Well, I'll be doing it as a responsible citizen of this country. I'll be watching,
well,
even though it is past my bedtime at 9 o'clock. But you know what I did? I shouldn't even admit this,
What?
but since you were pretty honest, let me be honest too. I did something I've never done before. I left the door to my house unlocked in the hope that somebody would steal my TV. So, in which case, I figured that would be an excuse for not watching.
Well,
Number's 877-301-8970. You know, the thing I hate about, this is not a State of the Union speech because you got to be president for at least a year to it. But, you know, this kind of speech, and I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican, I hate when half of the legislators in the room jump out of their seats like jacks in the box.
That's right.
And the other half sit on their hands. I understand it, but I don't like it. The second thing is when the Republicans all jump up every time Trump tells them to jump, you know what the worst part is? They're going to be standing up for things that a lot of them hated until Donald Trump told them they had to love it, whether it's essentially screwing Ukraine. These tariffs today, the stock market is down
Plunging, yeah.
750 points today, 600 and some points yesterday. We're going to ask John King, can you explain to me how assessing tariffs, which are going to raise the costs of people who voted for Donald Trump and those who did not, and it's crashing the stock market. How is that in the personal interest of a guy who cares about nothing except his personal interest?
Usually that's enough to get him worked up and to make him rethink his policy. But I don't know if it's going to matter because he's got this real bee in his bonnet about tariffs. But, you know, for people who are going to watch, I'm interested in how they're going to approach this thing if they are not fans of Donald Trump. I mean,
Say to me what you said to me this morning.
Well, thank God dry January is over. It's now March. So if you want to have a few cocktails or a glass of wine, you can do it. Or, maybe you might go with some edibles. You have to decide, you go with the edibles that get you up or the edibles that get you down. I would say maybe you want the ones that get you down, so maybe you can doze off in the middle of it. You're going to have popcorn, you're going to have chips. I mean, are you going to watch it with the family? Is this going to be a family tune-in? Usually these things are not that exciting. But
remember Nancy Pelosi ripped up
the speech.
His speech
Yes,
right behind him?
I do remember
a couple
that.
of years ago. Marjorie's focused on some problem
I'm trying
here.
to fix the text, Jim. I'm having trouble with my text.
Oh,
but
that's sad.
Jamie's come over to
877
rescue me, as he did in about a second and a half.
301-897. Now, there is some good news, and Marjorie touched on it a minute ago. We have complained, 73% of Democrats in this country, I mentioned this to Seth Moulton yesterday, believe their own party is not countering Trump strongly enough. But the beauty of tonight is, as you say, Democratic women are going to be dressed in pink. That is really going to change the dynamic in Washington. And it's nice that they're doing this. A lot of legislators, Congress people, Democrats, are bringing fired federal workers. And I think that's actually a good thing. But in the grand scheme of things, is that all there is in the word of that great singer, Peggy Lee? Pink outfits and bringing fired federal workers?
I think the Democrats have not gotten their act together, needless to say, about how to lead, the resistance. So I'm hoping it's going to get better, but they haven't gotten there yet. There was this great piece that was written like a month ago, before things really went off the rails completely. Well, I shouldn't say completely because there's more off-rail going to come, I guess. But said this is not the time to get distracted. It was an editorial from the Times saying, don't get overwhelmed. You don't want to tune out. And the analogy was, this is a dark analogy, but the analogy, not in this piece, but in other pieces I've read, is Russians tuned out after Putin came back for the second time. He was gone, then he came back. And things really got worse. So we can't tune out. It was irresponsible, I guess, to tune out. But to sit there and listen to him, sometimes he really goes on, too. Like, talks for like an hour or an hour and 15 minutes. I mean, that means you're going from 9 o'clock to like 10:15 or something. Then you have to have the analysis afterwards.
So you know what you think.
Exactly.
Exactly. So let me read a couple of comments, and then we'll get to your calls at 877-301-8970. Lucy in Worcester writes, in capital, I'm so sick of his voice, so no, I will not be watching. And the next time my husband plays a video of him speaking, I'm going to throw his damn phone out the damn window. And here is a coworker of ours, Zoe. After my 3 p.m. dinner, and by the way, if you're not a faithful listener to the show, Zoe is a 30-something who goes for the early bird special at 3 p.m. I will not be watching at 9 p.m. I've been asleep for 2 hours by then, Zoe writes.
And here's a good one that we have to decide. Well, we don't, but the Democrats do. Jeff from Needham says, I hope there's active Democratic booing and yells of liar. Remember the guy yelled at Joe Wilson, I think it was, that yelled at Barack Obama, called him a liar.
Boylston, didn't Justice Alito also mouth to Barack Obama, that's not true in the middle of the speech or some such thing?
But that's the question. Is it good for them to boo and hiss and make disrespectful noises, or is it better for them to just shut up and take it while he's on the dais? What do you think?
Well, I mean, you read what the Democrats from the Midwest are going to do. They're going to be mooning him during the... Now, I personally think that's distasteful.
That might be kind of fun, actually. A few moons from row 2 and 3 and 4.
877-301-8970 is the hardest part, by the way, and let's be serious for 1 second before we get to the calls, at least I'll try to be. It's not just the policies, which are overwhelmingly so disadvantageous to people here and around the world that need them to be good. Second, it's really hard to sit through the endless lying that everything is the greatest. Every single person in America wanted me to do X. Every person wanted us to get, every dollar spent on USAID was stolen money. I hope people are, for those who are, if I hear one more politician who feels they have to say before they trashed Elon Musk, of course I'm for more efficiency in government. I mean, save time. We don't need to hear that. Every day there's a story and a credible news source saying he said he saved $252 million in Social Security. It was $500,000. He said he saved $8 billion. I forget the agency. It was $8 million. Trump will be lying from 9 p.m. when he walks into the room until he says, God bless America.
They're not doing it in the way, we've talked about how Bill Clinton back in the 90s shrunk the federal government, not by as much as this could end up shrinking it, but he shrunk it by several hundred thousand, and it took a long time to look at where the so-called waste, fraud, and abuse, or at least the waste was. It took a long time. You can't do it this way. Obviously, after they fired the people that were the watchdogs for nuclear weapons, they decided they better hire them back. And I think it's also ideological. They don't like foreign aids. That's why USAID was first off the block. They don't like the EPA. That's why the EPA. A lot of this is ideological. I don't see a lot of big, huge contracts being cut from the Defense Department. They're talking about shrinking the Defense Department, but somehow I don't think that's going to be a place that's going to be hit like the EPA or Education Department is. It's politics.
Let's start with Tim in the car. Tim, thank you very much for calling. Hi.
Hi, folks. It's always a pleasure. And I won't be watching tonight because we gave up TV in my house when Dick Cheney was president, and he and Condoleezza Rice would be lying on the Sunday TV shows. Poor Condoleezza Rice. She couldn't lie to save her life. She'd be blinking away, trying to get out the lies that Dick and told her to make on Meet the Press. So as far as the Democrats are concerned, I just want to get this part in. There shouldn't be a single Democrat in the chamber. They should not do Trump the service of even sitting there and listening to him lie. And it's an indictment of the Democratic Party for them to even sit there and give him the decent behavior, what a normal politician would do. He's not a normal person. He's a psychotic, insane person, and we shouldn't be listening to it.
Tim, thank you for the call.
Unequivocal there.
How do you feel about that, by the way? Yesterday we had Seth Moulton on. We asked him if he was going. He said yes, but he's not sure he'll last for the whole thing. He's not bringing a guest. He said he didn't want to submit them to that kind of thing. Should they go? I mean, it's an interesting point that Tim makes, because the problem is when you go and you disagree, other than being totally disrespectful and doing what you said a minute ago,
rolling your eyes,
liar or whatever,
yep.
How do you show, I mean, with all due respect, the pink thing, I mean, really.
Yeah, I don't really. And besides, it's like, I don't like pink for breast cancer
So is it better they don't go?
I don't know the answer to that, but we have an interesting text from Alan and Seekonk who wanted us to ask if we still were in touch with Seth Moulton, who we had yesterday. It would be nice if every Democratic senator and representative dressed up in blue and yellow for
that
Ukraine.
I could support.
For Trump's speech is respectful allegiance to Ukraine.
I love
and the least they could do to protest for that lunacy that went on Friday night in the Oval Office. That's a great idea, Alan, from Seabrook, and I think the women might be better off switching to yellow and blue instead of
Can I tell you a really
pink.
heartening thing in a disheartening world? I'm so glad that person suggested that. I live, as I've said, in Inman Square in Cambridge. I would say a week ago, before Friday's meeting, I don't think I'd seen a Ukrainian flag in the neighborhood in maybe a year or so. I would say I saw 4 or 5
Did you?
after Friday's thing in the Oval Office, which is really pretty heartening. That is a fabulous idea, by the way. That I really like rather than the pink deal.
Somebody, I can't find it again, but somebody sent us a text before, said that they will not be watching tonight. They instead will be wrapping a towel around their head and self-waterboarding in their bidet.
Here's an anonymous texter. I will not watch for my mental well-being. And that's why a lot of people I know are not watching for the same reason. I'm repulsed by the theater of disdain for regular people. I'll read about it in the Globe and New York Times Wednesday enough. Let's go to Carlin. Oh, Carlin in Denver, Colorado. He used to occasionally come to the show in the library. Hey, Carlin, how are you?
Hey, both. I actually was in Boston for the first time in about a year last week and came to the library to watch you guys spend the day.
Should have
there,
said
which
hi.
was awesome.
Sorry to miss you.
I know, I should have.
What's going on?
So I personally feel like if you're going to have an opinion on the matter, you have a responsibility to watch. Whether we like it or not, it's happening live. It's fact or fiction, regardless of what he says, it's happening. And then you can come to the conclusions and decisions later and how you disseminate that information. But a lot of people are going to have opinions on this, and I feel like if you're going to have an opinion, you have a responsibility to consume all the information that leads to that opinion. My question for almost you two or anybody else really is I've personally been struggling a ton with where do I go to get factual information, what's actually true versus not. Every outlet at some point or another leans in one direction or another, which is obviously acceptable in some cases. How do you sort of determine what is actually
I can
fact or fiction?
I can answer the question. Even though we have we have the former editor of the Washington Post with us, Marty Barron, on Friday. Even though I worry about the news pages, there's no evidence that Bezos' influence has gone beyond the editorial page. I feel the same way about the New York Times, the Boston Globe, the Wall Street Journal, print media, which Marjorie
Newspapers.
comes from. I think, at least as of the moment, until we're proven wrong, Kaylin, have shown themselves to do their job and do it well. So that may change, but as of the moment, I think there are the cable shows. I mean, we're big fans of Anderson Cooper, Marjorie and I, and he's a terrific journalist.
They have done more harm to the credibility of the media than almost anything.
I think
it's like endless talking
You mean cable
heads.
in general?
Yes,
I agree with that.
I think that they're really bad because they're just a bunch of talking heads offering opinions. And half the time, which really drives me crazy, is, you know, that's why I love newspapers, because the reporters at newspapers actually have to go to the cover of the hearing tonight. They have to go to a scene of the fire or the scene of the murder or something. These are just people sitting there, and 90% of them have never been to anything. They haven't gone to sit in the living room of a welfare mother.
Sort of like J.D. Vance not going to Ukraine.
Exactly.
Hey, Kaylin, before you go away, I agree with you in the abstract, and I always used to agree with you on this issue about you have a responsibility to watch it. The only caveat I'd say, I know a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, whose mental health has been affected by watching Donald Trump. And I think in those cases, as high as the responsibility is as a, you know, sort of as a resident/citizen of this country, you got to do what's best for you. Kaylin, it's great to hear from you. Come say hi next time. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Here's Cindy in Menfield, another great point. She says, I don't want to give him the ratings, which she always cares about.
Well, he makes them up, so what's the difference?
Well, yeah, that's true.
Here's Ann in Falmouth. I'll be watching a different program about soulless rich people, White Lotus. That's
God.
Really good.
Have you seen it?
I saw the first episode.
I saw the first episode. I haven't seen the second
Great.
one yet. I'm looking at the Times headline, Joe. It's amazing. I mean, they just do such great work on this and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, I'm biased.
What are you about to say? What did they say?
Well, when you're looking for factual information.
I agree. They're really good.
The New York Times app is a great source on your phone, or if you want to spend the money for the paper, which is really expensive. I think most people don't want to do that anymore. But you can certainly get an online subscription to the Times, and it's really great, not to mention the great cooking recipes. Okay,
By the way, Marjorie's supposed to do full disclosure. To say
my
her
daughter
works at
That's
the New York Times.
And
I'll do it for
she,
her.
of course, is the reason why the New York Times is succeeding where other newspapers are failing. It's all my kid,
I should
absolutely.
say so, yes.
Okay, you're listening to Boston Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're talking about what is your strategy for tonight when Donald Trump will address the nation. Are you going to watch? Are you not going to watch? As your therapist told you, to just shut off the TV. 877-301-8970 is the number.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, stand-up comedian Margaret Cho is livid, and she's coming to Boston to tell us why. She joins us ahead of her show at the Wilbur. And poet and lawyer Dwayne Betts, who created a first-of-its-kind reading program and library for prisons, he's here to talk about his latest collection of poetry. That and more today at 2 on The Culture Show on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Explo. Explo's Boston area summer program lets middle schoolers be architects, lawyers, engineers, and more. Day and overnight options at explo.org/summer. General enrollment deadline April 1st. And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, offering local, long-distance, office, and piano moving, with 23 locations throughout New England and across the country. More information at gentlegiant.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Dregan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, a special coverage starting at 10 with Mark Hers of Mayor Wu and 3 other mayors before a congressional committee about immigration policies in those cities. Plus, the Attorney General joins us for an hour of Ask the AG tomorrow here at the library. And by the way, speaking of Mayor Wu in Washington, next Tuesday she'll be with us here at the library from 11 to 12. Obviously, part of that discussion will be about what happens tomorrow. If you're tuning in, we're talking about Trump's address to Congress tonight. Are you going to be watching? If you are, why? If you're not, why? Here's an anonymous text. You guys, meaning Marjorie and I, are hypocrites. You're expecting these Democrats tonight to do something. How about your activity? Marjorie and Jim, you can't even lift a finger to stop shopping at Amazon. How do you respond to that?
Well, I am a hypocrite in that sense. I've not yet canceled my Amazon account, but I like to think, I am doing a little something talking about these issues on the air, maybe a little bit. Something.
What are you reading, the New York Times? What are you doing?
No, I'm looking up something that I need to look up.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to Chris in Gloucester. Welcome to the show.
You didn't answer.
What did I say? No, I agree with Marjorie. She's a hypocrite. Totally.
We're both hypocrites.
Oh, it's about you.
Oh.
I'm not speaking to my own activity. What?
At least I don't have a Tesla.
Fine. Jamie says Marjorie's looking for a charger for her dustbuster on her phone.
That's right.
If you listen to the show, you get that. If you don't worry about it. Chris in Gloucester, hi. Welcome to the show. Thanks for calling. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be watching probably as long as the bourbon lasts.
I don't think you're alone on that, my friend, but go ahead.
And now another reason to watch is that I'm hoping for a fist fight between Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh,
that's possible.
That could be good.
Well, Crockett almost got, she's amazing. Crockett almost got into a fight. She got into a verbal fight with Nancy Mace, another fraud who was an anti-Trumper, who is now a Trump sycophant and then some. That was a pretty great exchange. Go ahead.
And lastly, my point, I think the Democrats should go, but I think they should pick a really good spot to turn around and leave, and that would be when he starts talking about selling out Ukraine, because that's a winning issue for the nation.
You know what? You know what's interesting, Chris, that I had never thought of till you said it. When Seth Moulton said to us yesterday, I'm going, but I don't know how much I'm going to take. I'm going to leave. I had never thought about what you just said. Maybe what they're going to do is an organized walkout, which is far better than not going. That is a brilliant strategy, Chris. Call somebody in Washington and tell them, I like that a lot, thanks for the call. Zoe just points out to us that both Crockett and Greene, I didn't know this, are on the oversight committee that is holding the hearing that Wu and the 3 other mayors are testifying in front of tomorrow. So that's true. By the way, there are 47 Congress people on this oversight committee. So while obviously we want to hear what Wu and all the mayors have to say, there's going to be a lot of bloviating on all sides of this thing tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm really worried about this. I hope it goes better than these things usually do. They can be really bad.
They can.
Wendy in Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hi, Wendy.
Hello.
Hello.
First-time caller.
Ooh, thank you.
I am not going to watch tonight.
Why?
And I'll tell you why. Trump is always very interested in his poll numbers. How many people watched him? So I'm not adding to those poll numbers.
Wendy, let me just say,
later.
I totally get that. But if only 1 million people watch, he's going to say 50 million people watched. I mean,
Oh, I know. It will be a lie.
Yeah, so Wendy, I'm curious, particularly since you're a first-time caller, you decide I'm not going to watch for that reason tonight. Are you going to read the papers tomorrow or watch cable and get up to speed on it, or you want nothing to do with this?
Oh, no, I'll get up to speed with it, but I will not add to those poll numbers tonight.
Fair enough.
Regardless of how much he lies about them.
No, I appreciate your active principle. Wendy, thanks for your first call. Make another one soon. John from Westford, who has called us regularly,
go
is a really good caller, who I think it's fair to say is Trump friendly, says, I'm going to make Paytex in. I'm going to make popcorn, crack a Diet Coke, and enjoy the show. So there you go.
You know, the one I really find just absolutely incredible, you've seen all the clips they've played of Marco Rubio.
You mean on the couch?
Going after Putin. You know, talking about the heroism of Zelensky and Ukraine, and we have to support them. And this is this is the tip of the iceberg.
How do you do
it? There's like 25 of them.
Well, there's more. I would argue, in terms of Republican support, there was no more outspoken supporter of USAID
than Marco Rubio. That's right.
And now, essentially, he, as the Secretary of State, is in charge of making sure that it's gotten rid of.
You know, so you wonder how people like Marco Rubio feel at night when they're lying in bed. You know, how do they feel that they've just totally sold their soul to this guy?
How about the members of this cabinet?
I know. Well,
many of whom were trashing this guy. How about Tucker Carlson? What did Tucker Carlson say about him last year that was leaked? I mean, how much contempt he had for him.
Yeah.
And now he's his friendliest interview.
But some of these people, I think, have lost their marbles or they have serious issues.
It's all about self-preservation. I think these are people with no principle. And I understand, I mean, we've had this discussion on the show. Some of them are not just worried about re-election, which in my opinion is really pathetic. Some are worried about their families being threatened with violence. The answer is, if you can't stand up to that, and I don't think I could, then you quit the job.
Well, they're getting a pass on that to some degree. How about the judges? How about the judges starting to do that? You know, if the federal judges can stand up to them, then I think that the politicians can stand up to them, or they can quit. I mean, it's a matter of degree. You know, everybody makes compromises, and you know, nobody's perfect.
These aren't compromises.
But these are wholesale kind of sellouts. Connie from Boston, Norton. Sorry, thank you for calling.
Hi, Connie. Welcome.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm on. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
I have mixed feelings about this. I don't want to hear another word coming out of this man Trump's mouth. At the same time, I know it's so irresponsible not to. And I want to quote from an opinion piece in the Sun Chronicle today where this man says, we still have 25 Republican House members and 5 Republicans in the Senate who are up for re-election in the next election. I am well past my prime, and I personally am in 80, so I am. But then he says, but just tell me where and when to protest, and I will be there. How about you?
I hope so.
That's my piece.
Connie, it's great. Someone called the other day and made similar comments about what she was doing to stay active and helping in races. I think there was a judge's race in Wisconsin and some other things, doing exactly what you're talking about as well.
You know what's discouraging, though? I mean, the first time around, as many people have pointed out, you could say it was an aberration. He didn't win the popular vote. This time, he came very close to winning the popular vote. So this is half of America, or close to half of America, thinks this is okay,
right.
Even with these new polls that are upset about price of eggs, et cetera. You know,
still almost half. It's 46.
I mean, this is who
48,
we are.
Whatever. I know exactly right.
It's like the comment section of the newspapers has taken over the whole country.
Okay, but this is what I plan to broach with John. But let's stay with that for a second. So, egg prices and other things that are very important in your life are going up dramatically. Every economist, unless you work for Donald Trump, says other prices are going to go up dramatically, including, for example, heating your home in New England as a result of these tariffs. And as a result of the tariffs, your 50% of America who are invested in the stock exchange saw it lose 1,500 points as of this moment in 2 days. Are all those people saying, hey, I love the guy, maybe a little personal pain, but I still love him? Is anybody?
I think they think Daddy will fix it.
Well, that's really good. Catherine in Boxford, my apologies. Hi.
Hi, I'm a first-time caller, and I appreciate you both.
You're very kind. Thank you.
My suggestion is that every Democrat bring a sign that addresses every issue they expect President Trump to address. Stay silent, but put these signs in front of his face. It'll throw him off his game.
Well, there's another strategy. I'm not sure. Are you allowed to bring things into the chamber? I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a congressperson with a sign. Hey, Catherine, before you go away, what do you think of that guy's suggestion a minute ago that at a pre-agreed upon time on a pre-agreed upon subject, all the Democrats walk out?
Well, they can walk out, but it doesn't really say much for their integrity to stick with it and listen. I think they have to listen.
Catherine, thanks for your first call. We really appreciate it. Make another one soon, please.
A lot of people like the idea of everybody wearing blue and yellow for Ukraine.
I love that idea. I love that idea.
Maybe the women can switch last minute. Tom in Rhode Island, what do you think?
You have 30 seconds, Tom. Sorry, we're low on time. Hi.
Yep. There is no integrity in engaging with such blatant propaganda. And to correct something, the GOP has proposed an increase of the Department of Defense budget from $850 billion to $1 trillion. Why are they increasing it so much while we are not currently at war with anyone? That money will be privatized, the Department of Defense will be shrunk, and the money will go directly into the hands of oligarchs like Bezos and Musk. Thank you.
Well put. Thanks, Tom. Concise and to the point.
Okay, our last texter has quoted Jack Nicholson from the movie Terms of Endearment about watching tonight and said, I would rather stick needles in my eyes. Remember that line?
I didn't see the movie.
You didn't see Terms of Endearment?
No.
Oh my God,
Who's the woman
Jim,
in
that's
that movie?
Shirley MacLaine.
I like Shirley MacLaine.
It's one of the classics of all time. Anyway, enough of that. Up next, we're going to talk to our sports authority, Trenni Casey of NBC Sports Boston. We're going to talk about the possibility of a woman breaking the 4-minute mile, and NFL teams complaining about terrible conditions where they work, including the New England Patriots, who are upset about their plane that is so old, apparently, has ashtrays in the armrests. Trenni Casey is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
After the devastating flood in Valencia, Spain, many residents lost everything. But scientists at a nearby university have been using advanced techniques to recover some of the priceless objects, family photos. I'm Marco Werman. That story in the day's top global headlines next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Umbrella Arts Center, presenting the New England premiere of Mohegan playwright Madeline Sayette's Where We Belong, now through March 23rd. TheUmbrellaArts.org. And the law firm of Davis Malm, building client relationships one transaction at a time. Learn more at DAVISMALM.com. Davis Malm. Lean, agile, strategic.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, special coverage of Mayor Wu and other mayors before the House Oversight Committee, talking about immigration policies in those cities. And Mayor Wu will be here in person with us from 11 to 12 next Tuesday at the library. Also tomorrow, 1 to 2, the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, will join us at the library tomorrow. We're joined now at the desk by Trenni Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hi, Trenni.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
Hello, Trenni Casey. So apparently you have some breaking news from the sports world to report?
Yes, we found out part of this yesterday, but we didn't get any details. But we all heard that Bill Belichick was going to be on NFL Films' off-season version of Hard Knocks. For those of you who don't know what Hard Knocks is, it's been on HBO, like now I guess it's HBO Max or whatever we're calling it. for like 20 plus years. And so NFL Films follows a football team around from like the off season sort of workouts, basically, but mostly all through training camp. Like
Behind
when
the
Aaron
scenes
Rodgers,
stuff,
behind the scenes, like when Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets, NFL Films, the Jets let them in. It was like probably one of their better rated seasons because people were like fascinated about Aaron Rodgers leaving the Packers and going to the Jets. So NFL Films could not get a single NFL team to agree to go on this year. So they approached Bill Belichick at the University of North Carolina. Belichick, who I think we all know is still trying desperately to get back to the NFL, is like, yeah, I'll go on Hard Knocks. Great. I would never do it as an NFL coach, but I'll do it and show everybody how cool I am at the University of North Carolina. Well, yesterday it was announced sort of mysteriously that no, he wasn't going to do it anymore. And today, Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk had some information as to why he's not going to be on. One isn't surprising. NFL owners didn't want Belichick getting an NFL Films platform. So that kind of makes some sense because I don't think Belichick's made a lot of fans the last few years. But this little nugget, Marjorie, was my favorite. There were also rumblings that certain people close to Belichick were already inserting himself or herself into the process in a way that was not viewed as ideal. It looks like his little 22-year-old girlfriend wanted to be famous on NFL Films, and they were like, I've had enough already of this girl.
Well,
I had to mute her.
God.
I follow her on Instagram. I had to mute her. I just couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't take it. It's like if after a while, like the hate watching of somebody on social media becomes like too much. I was like, I'm just getting irrationally angry at someone I've never met in my entire life.
Did you see this thing on Instagram the other day when she's at something with him and he's fast asleep?
No, I would have normally seen that, but I muted. I muted the account.
Here's what I want to know. Before you did get rid of the account, how many postings a day were we getting on Instagram?
I mean, like not an overabundance. They were just very like all of the sudden. I'm like, you do realize how this. I mean, maybe I don't know. She's a philosopher, so maybe it doesn't matter. By the way, his girlfriend is like 48 years younger than he is.
We knew that. Thank you very much.
Which I always like to say, and this always grosses people out. If I had a boyfriend the same age as Bill Belichick's girlfriend, the same age difference, my boyfriend wouldn't be born yet. Because I'm not 48 yet. How gross is that? I know, look at Jamie's face. How gross is it? It's so gross when you put it that way.
Yeah, is there
but
not?
Hey, love who you love, I guess, and get whatever you need to get out of it.
Okay.
Anyway, moving on.
Well, we're really glad for that. Can we stay on women, but this time women in sports? I watched last night. I have this total coincidence because I didn't know what we were going to talk about with you. I was going through TikTok and there was a
I'm sorry,
video.
Could you say that again? You were going through TikTok?
I was watching TikTok.
Yeah, all right.
And I came upon Laura Muir, who I never heard of, who is an Irish woman. I have no idea if it was this year or 8 years ago, running a mile in like something incredible, like 4 minutes and 17 seconds, and doing it in a way where even there were a couple of champions in the race, I think Kenyans, I'm not 100% sure. Yeah. She almost lapped the field even in a mile. So the scientists are now saying that a 4-minute mile, a la Roger Bannister 400 years ago, is on the verge of happening with a woman. Is that real?
I think it could. Listen, and can you remind me of her name? Because I know
this
she's
woman
the woman, not
Muir?
Not Muir, the Kenyan. It was in the article
I'll look
that
it
you
up
guys
in a
sent
second.
me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say it incorrectly because I believe she's a Boston Marathon champion. She's certainly an Olympic gold medalist. She's one of the best mile runners in the world, and her best mile time right now is 4:07. So she'd have to essentially take off 2 seconds per quarter mile, so per lap around the track, which I'm sure people are like,
I'm going to Faith Kipyegon? Is that it?
I think it's Kipyoge.
Y-E-G-O-N. Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, sorry.
Faith
Apologies.
Kipyegon.
Yeah.
I honestly, so the way they're talking about that maybe she can do it is similar to the way that Kipchoge, the Boston Marathon champion, one of the best male marathoners we've ever seen, the way he broke 2 hours in Vienna. He did it in a controlled environment with pacers sort of blocking the wind. He was able to draft off them similar. You can draft in running the same way you draft, similarly as you draft in cycling. So, you can kind of use someone else's energy force. Yeah. Also improved carbon fiber shoes, these plated shoes that these runners wear. Nike has one that scientifically they've shown gives you a 4% advantage when you wear these plated shoes.
What does that mean, plated shoes?
So a plated shoe, you wear there's a carbon fiber plate in it, and the science behind it, and I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit, but I think this is how it works. When you run, it gives you a little bit of a bounce, and it gives you like energy back. So it basically takes some of the pressure off of your legs. So you're just sort of using less energy in your legs, which keeps your legs fresher, which allows your turnover to maintain and continue to be faster. Like I actually had I talked to the woman who ran my segment of the MS run I'm going to do in July. I talked to the woman who ran it last year. She suggested to me to get a plated shoe to run in some of the days, because she says it really helps your legs like just feel better. It's like the pounding, something about all the energy return from the plate. I don't know.
Let me ask you a question.
Physics wasn't necessarily my best.
Can you explain something about drafting to me? I was always of the opinion, until I read whatever story we all read, that the key to that was having somebody in front of you to block the wind. But they said the perfect drafting, to use that term, somebody in front of you and somebody behind you. What is the function of the person?
Again,
you don't know
physics
either.
not my. I got like a C in high school physics, and I needed like excessive tutoring. Math,
Fair
science,
enough.
not my. But my guess would be is that, again, you're sort of getting, I'm sure there's some sort of like energy force and pull. It's probably similar to cycling, where if you're on somebody's wheel, you're sort of drafting behind them and taking some of their energy source and using their momentum to propel you forward. I would assume that that's sort of like why you ride in pelotons, right? Like why you ride in a pack, that pack together, everybody's sort of drafting off of each other. A peloton is obviously what it's called in cycling, not what it's called in running. But I do think that it can happen. And I think some of the skepticism is that for a while, people just haven't felt that women can athletically accomplish what men can. But I think running, and this isn't distance running, women tend to be better distance runners because we have a higher concentration of body fat than male athletes do, so you sort of have this extra energy to carry you, but yet there's still a pretty big difference in times. But at this point, like literally thousands of male runners have beat this 4-minute barrier. To me, when it becomes that ubiquitous among male, top flight male runners, to me then it becomes possible for female runners. I just think we'll see it. I think we'll see it in our lifetime, in my lifetime.
That'd be great.
So the Department of Education under Trump has kind of, it seems like shafted these women athletes in terms of payments that they can get through Title IX. Did you have
the NIL stuff? I can explain it.
Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't aware of this till this morning either. Under Title IX, colleges have to spend roughly equal amounts of money on men and women's sports. And under Joe Biden, they extended that and said that also applies to spending from colleges on names, NIL, names, image, and likenesses. That's the thing. I assume most people know about it now, which allows some college stars to make millions of dollars while they're still in college. What the Trump administration has done is shown the only thing about women in sports they care about is trans women, and even though the numbers of people affected are infinitesimally small, they've changed the rules under Title IX so that women will not be able to benefit from NIL money.
And this is terrible because this is often the way that women can make money and build a brand for themselves. So the inequity in this, if you are an offensive lineman, we'll just use that because that's been if we talked about Patriots football today, we'd probably be talking about Will Campbell and his short arms and how that, that poor little left tackle isn't probably going to go high in the draft anymore because his arms are too short.
Oh.
I know, but if you're...
like Kristen Wiig in that skit, but that's another... Yes, go ahead.
But Will Campbell will still come to the NFL. Instead of playing tackle, he'll play guard. He'll probably still make tens of millions of dollars. Obviously, the money in female athletics is not there yet. There's no equivalent of the NFL for women. But unless you're talking about really kind of, I guess, women's soccer or women's tennis for sure, women's sports, as we well know, the athletes get paid significantly less. So the way that they make up that disparity in how much income they bring in is by building brands. So Caitlin Clark, thanks to NIL, became one of the most popular, I think, female college athlete we had seen in decades, if not ever. She then parlayed that because she was so big and she made so much money in college. She already had this base, and she parlayed that into all of these endorsements in college. This is also a way of like, if you're not giving equal payments, you're basically saying women's sports are not equal to men's sports. You're saying women's sports do not have the eyeballs, which ratings and everything is proving otherwise. Women's college basketball is gaining steam, women's college hockey, women's college soccer. All of these sports are gaining eyeballs and attention and hopefully money from networks that should go back into these women's pockets the same way they go into men's
Let's
sports.
end this part, the way we began it. He, high-profile fashion, rails against trans women in sports, and there's a big divide about that.
It's talking about equality
but the
and
numbers
chances for women.
are incredibly small. Here, a system that would benefit tons of excellent college athletes, he's ensuring that under Title IX, they're not going to get any money.
Because I think, again, I don't think it's really about equality and meritocracy. It's about men getting more than women and making men feel like men again. You know, we have Make America Great Again. No, it's really about making men feel like men again, whatever that's supposed to, antiquated, definition.
I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I'll let you know how it goes if I get there. We're talking to Trenni Casey.
Okay, so apparently there was some fisticuffs, throwing punches.
Oh my God,
this was great. I saw this.
Was so great.
Okay, so is it great that women are acting like men and beating each other up on the court?
Listen, so what happened? It wasn't on the court; it was on the ice.
On the ice,
at
sorry.
PWHL game, which is the Professional Women's Hockey League. We have a team here in Boston, the Boston Fleet. They were playing Ottawa. Boston won this game, by the way, in overtime 3-2. And I think it was Jill Soulier is her name. So she's a Canadian national. She actually won a gold medal for Team Canada in the 2022 Olympics. She got into a fight. I forget the name of the player with Ottawa, but they had been like heavy checking throughout the game. It had gotten kind of physical. They were kind of trash talking each other. And finally, she just said enough is enough with this, this woman. And she did what male players do. She stuck up for her team, and she threw a hell of a right hook.
I watched it this morning.
She came in, I was like, it was. Wow. And listen, it's not going to happen all the time in women's hockey because I just don't think it's necessarily as much a part of the game fighting.
They said it's the first one ever.
It's the first one ever, so it's really not a part of the game. But I'm glad that, if that's what the moment feels, and they said that this video got like more views than anything they've done. Listen, I'm all for anything that raises the profile of high quality women's sports. But I thought the funniest line, I don't know how much of the article you guys got through, if you got through all of it or not, but Jill Soulier says that that was more exciting and got more attention, and she got more text messages for that than she did the gold medal.
Winning the gold medal, that was great.
I thought it was awesome. It got the fans going.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll take a couple of boos next time I go out there, but please know it was all respectful. And it was a lot of fun. It was respectful. I don't know if you can call it that, but anyway, what the heck, right?
I mean, listen, again, it doesn't need to be. I don't like that fighting is a huge part of men's hockey because I actually think that the result of it has led to, you have what they call goons, right? They're guys who are put on the ice strictly to get into dust-ups on the ice, get into fights. And those guys often are the lower paid guys on your roster and many times have long-lasting effects. They're more likely to have CTE and all these negative.
The enforcers.
Right, they're enforcers, negative ramifications. But listen, every once in a while, it's called for. Like every once in a while, you need to defend yourself or defend your team. And I love that Jill did it, and it's awesome. And the Fleet won.
So we're going to switch to men's sports, and we want to talk about the rating that the NFL Players Union gave to different teams. But before we
love this story.
We can't leave something hanging. You have 30 seconds max to explain the short arm comment, which I'm sure most people have no understanding of, and I didn't until 2 days ago.
Okay, so Will Campbell is a left tackle, which is a huge position of need for the New England Patriots. He plays at LSU, a big-time college football program. However, if you're going to be a left tackle in the NFL, they want your arm length, which is from like the back of your scapula. Only the people here can see this, or if you're watching on YouTube. It's from like the back of your shoulder to the tip of your middle finger. It should be 33 inches or longer. The average is 34. He came in at 32 and 5/8.
Forget it.
We measured my arms yesterday. My arms are like 31 and a half. So little Will Campbell, like big 6 foot something, has like arms like my length. But the real issue is when a defensive lineman is coming you off the line, if they have long arms, even if you're quick, you have to be able to hold them at bay. And if you can't reach them, if you're just like this,
it's very nice.
You can't necessarily be a good left tackle.
Oh, but he's only short by like what, half an inch?
But
or
apparently, apparently it's like a really big deal. And now everyone is saying, I think it's like he was projected to go number 4 overall, and now he's dropped in the draft. Like now they have this
one of the
other guy.
saddest stories
Well,
I've
how did
ever
he do at LSU?
He was great. He was an unbelievable player. And he's like one of the fastest, most athletic.
No,
So he's
explain
just-
why. The
problem
reason he
is-
did so well at LSU, in college you can wear arm extensions. You're not allowed to wear them in the pros.
He
so-
wore like, you know what I'm thinking of? Like
Boxing
those little
gloves?
tiny hands like that come
Yeah,
out like, and you
Kristen
put them
Wiig.
like
That's
this.
what we're talking about. Okay, let's
Okay.
get back to the Patriots. I don't understand this at all. This, starting a few years ago, the NFL Players Association did a rating, the players, and like 70% of them participate, anonymous surveys, other than what team you're for, and you rate your own team, treatment of families, food, nutrition, locker room, training room, coaches, travel, etc. Last year, the Patriots did really horribly. The only thing I think they improved in is they went from like a D or an F in how they treated the families
They went from
of
an
players.
F minus to a C plus.
Yeah,
C
they got a
plus.
daycare on site for
However,
the games.
food and dining area F. I'm sorry, weight room F. Team travel, as Marjorie said, the plane is so old it's got cigarette
It has
ashtrays.
ashtrays. It has
and F. And I don't understand.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
When you are, every owner I think is a billionaire. When
Yeah, I think
and
so.
when all that matters are the players. That's what it's all about, is how they are and how happy they are doing what they do. How is it possible 2 years in a row? How did Kraft et al. Not just fix all this thing, order whoever after the last survey, spend whatever you got to spend, and give them whatever they want?
Okay, so in the defense of the Crafts, and they did at some point in this survey note the Patriots have been building a new facility. So they've built like a new weight room, locker room area, practice facility adjacent to where
Ready
their
next
practice
year.
field is. It's gonna be ready next year. So everyone expects that weight room, training room, all that, those grades should go up next year. Like the Washington Commanders were the 32nd ranked team last year. New ownership changed a bunch. They're now the 11th happiest team, highest rated team in the NFL. So it is possible to flip the script overnight. The one that's getting all the attention is the plane. So the one area that the Patriots have up on everybody else, everyone else uses a charter system. So the Miami Dolphins basically have these planes that are fitted, they're VIP formats. So each they get pod. I don't know if any of you have ever flown first class internationally, where you get a pod. There's pods for every single person on this plane.
Oh.
These planes that the Patriots fly on must be from when was the last time you could smoke on a plane? The 80s?
Oh, God, yeah.
I didn't fly
I think it's
until
30 years old, the plane.
1992, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I certainly have never been on a plane where someone's smoking in front of me. But these planes have ashtrays in the armrests. There's no Wi-Fi. Imagine being a 6'6",
Yeah, they have to be
300-pound
big
offensive lineman,
seats.
and you're sitting in essentially a coach
No,
seat.
but if you have short arms, it's not that big a deal. Exactly.
Yeah, if you're
So-
Will Campbell, it's no big
Listen to
deal.
this, by the way. The number one ranked, Patriots are second to last of all the teams average.
Yes.
Miami Dolphins are one. Listen to these scores for the Dolphins. A plus, A plus, A plus, AA. Listen to the Patriots, same things. C plus, F, B, F, B plus, D. I don't understand.
To me,
it.
one of the most damning grades in that report for the Patriots is that the ownership got a D. And when players were asked if they felt that ownership was committed to building a successful franchise and investing back in the team, they got a D.
Wow.
Players don't feel that the Crafts are investing what they need to, monetarily, in creating a successful winning football team. I have to imagine Robert Kraft read this again and was like, okay, things have to change.
You read it last year. It was horrible
I know.
last year, too.
Maybe you can only change so many things. Maybe all of a sudden now they're going to get a retrofitted plane. Maybe they get new chefs in. It did. You know who got the highest grade on the survey?
The fired coach.
The fired head coach.
That was pretty
got
good.
the highest. Gerard Mayo got, I think, a B or a B plus. And strength and conditioning, I think, also got a B. Gerard Mayo's brother.
By the way,
Wow.
So that also was an interesting little side. My Green Bay Packers came in 7th on
We
the
don't
list,
care.
and we don't have a
So
billionaire
that
owner.
obviously means that people like Gerard Mayo.
I think they liked him as a person. I think listen, my guess is, and this is just a guess, if they improve some of these complaints that they have, and they have a good season this year, we're going to see a drastically different set of grades next year under Mike Vrabel.
Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And VinFin, providing support services for people with mental health conditions and disabilities. Presenting the VinFin Film Festival on March 15th at GBH Studios to promote dialogue and change through films. More at vinfin.org. This month and throughout the year, GBH celebrates the vital contributions of women through programming that highlights their achievements in history, science, culture, education, and the arts. To learn more, visit gbh.org/Women's History Month.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We start the noon hour with the Boston Foundation's Lee Pelton. As local non
All ahead, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. President Trump will address a joint session of Congress today, a speech that looks like a State of the Union, but technically it's not, as it's the first of his new term. As NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reports, there are few details on what he'll say, but he has plenty of recent controversies to talk about.
Trump's speech comes as new tariffs he's imposed have gone into effect on China and allies Canada and Mexico. Tariffs are taxes paid to import goods from abroad. That means U.S. businesses pay U.S. tariffs. Those tariffs can cause higher prices for consumers. The speech also comes as the U.S. has suspended military aid to Ukraine days after an Oval Office argument between Trump, Vice President Vance, and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky. During his speech, Trump is expected to ask Congress to pass new funding for border security and possibly also an extension of tax cuts. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says President Trump launched a trade war against Canada, and he says he's levying retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods.
Canada will be implementing 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods, starting with tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods immediately, and tariffs on the remaining $125 billion of American products in 21 days' time.
China, meanwhile, says it's imposing tariffs on U.S. farm products and expanding controls on doing business with key U.S. companies. Mexico says it will announce retaliatory tariffs on Sunday. Ukraine's President Zelensky says on social media he's ready to sign a minerals deal with the U.S. and work with President Trump. He says no one wants an endless war and that his meeting with Trump at the White House Friday didn't go the way it was supposed to and that was regrettable. The Supreme Court hears arguments today involving Mexico and American gun manufacturers. NPR's Nina Totenberg has more.
Mexico is suing Smith & Wesson and other gun makers for $10 billion in damages, claiming that they're turning a blind eye to hundreds of thousands of high-powered weapons made in the U.S. and trafficked illegally into the hands of Mexican cartels. Jonathan Lowy, co-counsel for Mexico, maintains that 90% of gun dealers act legally, but the rest do not.
Those bad actors sell to obvious cartel traffickers in bulk sales.
But Lawrence Keene, counsel for the Firearms Industry Trade Association, counters that manufacturers can't be held accountable for the actions of dealers.
If that was all that was required, Budweiser would be responsible for drunk driving accidents.
A decision in the case is expected by summer. Nina Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
The Dow is down 663 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Many city and town officials throughout Massachusetts are bracing for 4 years of March Madness, and they're not referring to college basketball. Last night, the Cambridge City Council voted to declare the city a sanctuary city for transgender and non-binary people. The council also warned that millions of dollars in federal funding could be in serious jeopardy over cuts being made by the Trump administration. Cambridge receives $23 million in federal funding, with millions more going to independent programs like the Cambridge Housing Authority and Cambridge Health Alliance. And last night, officials prepared residents for a very uncertain future. Vice Mayor Mark McGovern was quoted as saying, "Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride for a while." Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey will be a guest on Late Night with Seth Meyers tomorrow night, and it comes just days after doing a major interview with the New York Times. Healey shared a social media post from the TV show teasing the lineup of guests scheduled for this week and wrote, "See you Wednesday." Last week, Healey spoke to Lulu Garcia-Navarro, writer and co-host of The Interview in the New York Times. The two spoke about a range of topics, from her strategy for leading Massachusetts during President Trump's second term and the administration's border czar, Tom Homan, promising to bring hell to Boston. In sports, the Bruins host Nashville at the Garden tonight. Exhibition baseball. Red Sox play Pittsburgh this afternoon. And in the sport of politics, President Trump addresses a joint session of Congress tonight. You can hear it on GBH, on your phone, your radio, your tablet, your computer, whatever. It all begins at 9. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, working to help protect small businesses and the owners that run them, offering customizable coverages to salons, accounting firms, tradespeople, and more. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow we're going to have special coverage from Washington, where Mayor Wu is going to be testifying about immigration policies in Boston before Congress. Plus, Attorney General Andrea Campbell is going to be with us from 1 to 2 here at the Boston Public Library for another edition of Ask the AG. And next Tuesday, after her Washington performance, the mayor herself, Michelle Wu, will be back here at the Boston Public Library from 11 to 12. Hello again, Jim.
And we should say on Friday at the library, Marty Barron, former editor of the Globe and the Washington Post, will zoom in for our media segment, and former head of the EPA and key environmental advisor to Joe Biden, the EPA under Obama, Gina McCarthy, will join us as well. We're joined now by Lee Pelton. Lee is the president and CEO of the Boston Foundation, a member of the board of trustees here at GBH, and previously served as the 12th president of Emerson College. He joins us monthly. Lee, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So, as Jim just said, you were at Emerson College, and you've been in academics for a big chunk of your life. So what do you think Linda McMahon's confirmation as the head of the Department of Education? She's transferring over from wrestling. She was with that, what do you call it,
WWE.
UFC or whatever it is,
WWE.
WWE. Yeah. What is her appointment going to mean, do you think, for the Department of Ed?
I don't know. It's hard to imagine that we are where we are today in this area and in other areas as well, to have a wrestling exec who's now overseeing higher education. Maybe that's what we needed, slamming people to the floor. And I don't know. It's just, it's hard. It's hard to let me say this. So the higher education in America has been blessed by two things. One is our diversity. So we have research universities. We have universities that are principally teaching. We have liberal arts colleges. We have community colleges. And so it's hard to talk about the university in America as monolithic.
Yeah.
Because we have so many different types, and those different types have different aims and purposes and ways of doing their business. We also, maybe until now, we've not had a ministry of education. If you are at a college or a university in Japan, the ministry can tell you how many students you can enroll, and not more than that. They give you a number. And so a lot of other, even in European countries, have ministries. We haven't had that. I could take us all the way back to Dartmouth College and a famous lawsuit, 1819, that was defended before the Supreme Court by one of its illustrious alumni, Daniel Webster.
About what?
Well, it was at a point when the university, when New Hampshire wanted to take over Dartmouth College and make it part of their public university system. And a famous case, it's Woodward versus Dartmouth College, that went to the Supreme Court in 1819. And Daniel Webster was the counsel for Dartmouth College, and he won, and he uttered these sort of famous words, "'Tis a small college, but there are those who love it."
Oh my God, I didn't know that. That's great.
So that was the beginning of allowing colleges and universities to be autonomous, to make decisions about their own curriculum, about their instruction, about who to hire as professors. And so that's really a notable case. And so we're in this country, I think, blessed with that kind of independence and autonomy. What I worry about now under this next education regime is that there's going to be attempts to erode that autonomy and erode that independence and be very dictatorial about what should be taught and who should teach it.
By the way, just on that subject, it strikes me as so bizarre that the federal government is talking about K through 12 and colleges. I mean, normally before this regime, who decided what the curriculum was at Emerson or at Dartmouth or any place?
We did.
Yeah.
No one else.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the government was not in there supervising what you were, okay.
Not
so
at
this
all.
is a totally new thing.
Not at all. And we could teach courses on diversity.
That's
no one
right.
said you can't do that. And so we're in a different era, and this is a really serious issue. And it's not just about colleges and universities. It's about an erosion of freedom and independence, and judgment and critical thinking.
Well,
That's
can I
what's
tell you
at stake
something? We've
here.
had this discussion. I had no idea we were going down this route, but let's go down this route for a second. I think, in my opinion, your former colleagues, with a couple of notable exceptions in the university president world, are collaborators in this. We've discussed the lack of courage. There's a guy from Mount Holyoke. There's the guy from Wesleyan. You can count on one hand the number of presidents who have had the courage of essentially what Janet Mills did as governor of Maine the other day, is say, we'll abide by the law. And she didn't say these words. I'm ready for you. Come get me. And it's one of these things where, and Marjorie said this a lot in the context of people who used to work for Trump in 1.0, if the university presidents got together, like 10 of the really powerful ones, and I'm assuming, and I mean this sincerely, if you were still at Emerson, you would clearly be one of those 10, and stood up together, they're not going to defund 10, 20, 50 universities, but instead they're cowering, which allows Trump to get away with what you're decrying
And by
right
the way,
here.
look at the three women, once again here, Michelle Wu, Andrea Campbell, and Maura Healey, that have said we're going to keep doing
Absolutely right.
DEI the way we've been doing it and really, really don't care what you have to say
So
about it.
why has there been such little resistance from leaders in the university world, Lee Pelton?
Well, I'll talk about a university on the other side of the Charles. It's grant funding, I think just from NIH. It may be more than that.
600 or something?
Oh, well, it's $100 million total. And so that's under threat there. So,
Is that a year? Or is
well,
that,
if they take that funding away, that's the loss.
That's the law. That's
the
like an
loss.
annual.
So wait, but where are you going with this? So because I think they get 600 million or somewhere there in federal grants, because the loss would be so great, They have to do what they have to do? That's not Lee Pelton.
No, that's not Lee Pelton. Let me be clear. I would be standing shoulder to shoulder with my colleagues in opposition to what's happening in Washington today. I would.
Did you get federal money at Emerson?
No.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. All right.
Because we're not a research university.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Okay, well, the government doesn't really fund much having to do with the arts anyway, do they?
Well,
Okay.
You know what's funny?
They run the Kennedy Center.
Yeah, for what that's worth. By the way, Peter Wolf, I should just say, to give a shout out to Peter. Peter Wolf, obviously of Jay Giles fame, and then obviously a Bostonian, and who's going to be with us on Thursday. His memoir is published, I think, next week on March 11th. He canceled his appearance at the Kennedy Center on March 21st. Good for him, I should say, about the release of his new book. Sorry to interrupt you.
Lee Pelton, I don't know if you saw this piece in the Globe, Ann Kirshner, if that I'm pronouncing it correctly, and Jeffrey Silingo talking about higher education, this moment of reckoning, when they talked about higher ed having to do something about the battered public confidence, the runaway costs, and the growing disconnect from economic realities. I think that had to do with the tuition up. Massive administrative costs and bureaucratic entanglements was kind of what they were talking about having to deal with, and job placement. Is higher ed falling down on the job here to a big way?
I did read it, and I want to be charitable here. So I did read it, but I think the issues that they're talking about are not related to this moment.
Yeah.
These are issues that higher education has been dealing with for many, many years. We know there's been a cliff in terms of enrollments because of the age of students and so on. Take state universities. I'm not even sure why they call them state universities anymore. At Michigan University gets less than 10% of its funding from the state. And they're not the exception. They are the rule.
And we used to give them a lot of money from the states.
A lot of money,
Yeah.
and that's disappeared. In fact, I wrote about this in 2014, and looking at certain states, universities, about when it would, at that current rate, when they would receive no funding from the states. So that's been an issue. I think that here's the way I would sort of address some of these issues. First of all, there's a difference between disciplines and departments. So disciplines refer to some academic area. Departments is what you house those in. And they could be housed in a variety of places. And right now, they're housed, we have a lot of departments. My approach would be to have fewer departments, larger departments that are consolidated, and where students could enter into these larger departments, and they could really have an interdisciplinary experience across those disciplines in those departments. So that's one thing that happened. And I think they were suggesting that too. Just, I would say, get rid of the departments. But you have to understand that, and I don't mean this in a nasty way, but
when someone says that, I don't mean in a nasty way, they're about to be nasty. Go ahead. That's fine. We like that, actually.
Think of the beginning of faculty. It's a guild. And in the Middle Ages. And so there's always involved some protection of that guild and protection of that fiefdom that you oversee. And so I understand that. I also think, and I argued this many years ago, we could have colleges that give out degrees after 3 years, not 4 years.
I'm so with you.
We could do that. So, in the college curriculum, these are you've got your departments, you've got elements, other elements in all sort of striving and competing for time, the core curriculum and so on. And if you could just shave a quarter off of each of those elements, you could have a 3-year degree.
Yeah.
By the way, I
likely
shaved
to
a year
happen,
off.
but
I didn't go my freshman year. That's the way I personally shaved off. It's another variation on a theme.
or do what
Thank you,
Marjorie. southern New Hampshire does, which is really kind of brilliant. Which is, your first 2 years there, you can take classes online.
Yeah.
And then to finish up your degree, you come to the campus, to the main campus, and finish up, in a seat situation.
You lost me on that, by the way. Next time you're here, we're going to talk about this online. I think it's second-class education. I know it's more affordable, but somebody like me, if I had had online education, I mean, I'm serious. It's a lot of us need engagement, whatever.
Yeah. Well,
can we go
better than you think.
Okay, we'll do that next time you're here. I want to talk about a bunch of things at the Boston Foundation. Briefly, if we can, because there are a bunch we wanted to go through. Boston Indicators is one of the most responsible and wonderful sources of data on all things that matter in our lives. It never occurred to me, and I'm embarrassed to say this, till I read a piece, is when you can't rely on federal data, because one, you don't know it's true anymore, and when you relied on federal data that, for example, is erased, is scrubbed from a website with no notice to anybody, like stuff is on LGBTQ stuff, DEI, trans people, etc. What's the impact of that on local operations? We should say it's part of your operation, part of the Boston Foundation. How do they do their work when they can't rely on federal data to do their work?
Well, you can't. It's not just, the Boston Foundation. It's colleges and universities. It's research centers. It's all of that. Because you look to that data, which in the past has been reliable, to use in, making judgments about certain programs and, helping with your research and so on. And so that, that effort, of course, they had to pull it back. They had to pull it back to make all of that data not available. They did it with one exception, and that is with respect to gender identity.
Yeah,
that's you still don't have that data available to you.
But what's there? I mean, we were talking before you got here, the Doge stuff. 2 weeks ago, Elon Musk saved $250 million in Social Security. In fact, it wasn't $252 million, it was $500,000. He saved $8 billion in another department, it was $8 million. It's not just Doge, it's all a succession of made-up crap to serve the Grand Master. And we suffer because we can't rely upon credible information.
It's a comedy of errors.
Can you talk about this $2 million grant program you have to try to help small nonprofits get through funding freezes and that sort of thing?
So our response to the crisis that we find ourselves in was to do three things. One was to create a special funding for our safety net grants, and these are the grants that we give. They're cash grants. They're not large, $25,000 or $50,000, but they go directly to where the need is, and they use them for general purpose because we trust them to know how to deploy those dollars. And so we set up, in addition to the program they already have, we created a special safety nets grant program of $2 million. Again, anywhere from $25,000 to $75,000 for 1 year for those organizations that are in need and are really vulnerable at this point of time. The application opened in mid-February, will end in March 11th. Our hope was, which has turned out to be true, is that our initial $2 million investment, which is a floor, not a ceiling, would catalyze other investments in it. And we've seen that over the period of time. I think the day after we launched it, We received from someone from our donor community a $100,000 gift, and we've received others since then. Our hope is that that will grow over time to meet the need, and the need is really remarkable at this point.
It's great you're doing it.
So that's one thing we're doing. The other is
The men and boys.
well,
go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, the other thing that we're doing is, first of all, we're out in the community. Our
Right.
program officers are out in the community trying to understand the impacts of this new federal administration. I'm speaking to lots of individuals and lots of groups, affinity groups, and so on. And so that's also been, also very, very.
So people are
important.
already feeling it.
Oh yeah.
What are they
absolutely.
feeling?
Well, mostly what they're feeling right now is what they'll tell you: fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what's going to happen, and they fear the impact of some of their funding drying up. The other thing we're doing in partnership with the Mass Inc. polling operation and with the Massachusetts Network for Nonprofits is a survey, which we've already released to dozens of nonprofits to find out what their issues are, so that we can have we can document what those issues are, and once we document what those issues are, then we can perhaps be in a better position to respond in a reasonable and rational way.
You know, Marjorie touched on it a second. You have a report coming out later this week. If you can just give us like a 60-second preview, because it sounds wildly interesting to both of us. This thing, I think Thursday is the day it's being issued, the challenges facing men and boys. Could you give us a brief preview, and then next month we'll discuss it in depth?
Well, if you look at health, mental health, education attainment, and just about any aspect of human life, men and boys aren't doing very well.
Yeah.
They really aren't. They're not doing very well relative to girls and women, maybe no surprise there, but they're not doing as well today as they were 10 years ago. So boys are less likely to complete their high school, today than they did 10 years ago. Certainly less likely to do it relative to women. Same thing for colleges and universities. Less likely to, finish their degree relative to women and also to men several years ago. This won't surprise you to hear me say this, but from a mental health point of view, men and boys experience more isolation and a feeling of isolation today than many years ago, and certainly less than women, and higher suicide rates relative to women. And so I want to make something clear. This is not a zero-sum game. So I don't want anybody to leave this thinking that, I'm saying, if somehow men get more then women get less. That's not what we're talking about. These are comparisons, and we can look at both. So
that's coming out later this week, correct?
Out, yep.
Next month we'll go in depth. Before you go, I want to play a little sound for you. It's
yes,
a quiz.
we do.
And then we want you to tell the audience why we're playing this sound, Lee Pelton. Here it is.
I can't tell you any sure way to happiness. I only know that you've got to go out and find it for yourselves. You can't lean on the success of your parents. That's their success. And don't be held back by their failures.
Listen to him. Believe him.
Makes no difference what they did or didn't do. You just stand on your own 2 feet.
So I assume you're worried this Boston Foundation thing is going to dry up any day now for you. So why do we play? What is that? What were we playing that sound for, Lee?
Well, that was the famous Mr. Selden in Rodgers and Hammerstein's Carousel.
What's it got to do with you?
Well, Oh boy. So the Boston Lyric Opera is bringing that to Boston. Opening night is April 4th. That's a Friday, then the Sunday, and then the following week it's the 11th and the 13th. And I'm playing two roles in this.
Two roles?
Two roles, yes. Mr. Selden,
Okay.
who in Carousel is described as the most beloved person, a most beloved person.
There you go.
And then I'm also playing the role of Starkeeper.
You know what the hell you're doing? I mean, do you know how to act?
Listen. I can't sing. I can't read music.
Perfect.
And I find myself in this role. But as you know, every year I try to do something outside of my comfort
We
zone.
know that.
So last year, co-curating this piece at the Gardner with Peggy Fogelman and doing this really at the at the request of Bradley Vernotter, who,
How
by the
nervous
way,
are you?
he was
here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He was here.
I mean,
How
he is-
nervous are you? You should be.
very.
You nervous? You're okay, fine. Just want to be clear.
Yeah, I have to memorize all these lines.
Yeah,
and,
we'll be there.
so-
Front row. We'll
Front
be
row.
sitting.
We'll wave.
We'll be checking this out. And
We'll
we'll
have
do
the
a
Boston
review
Public Radio sign.
next time you are here. Good
Well,
luck
we could
with
actually bring, I'd be happy to bring Brad back and Bradley back. And,
Yeah.
Fine.
Maybe.
We'll do it. We get free tickets. You can come anytime you want.
yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
Fair enough?
and have a singer or two.
Okay.
So.
Lee Pelton will be doing it.
Thank you very, very much, Lee Pelton.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with Lee Pelton, President and CEO of the Boston Foundation, a member of GBH's Board of Trustees. He previously served as the 12th president of Emerson College.
Before you introduce the next thing, can I just recognize somebody?
Yes.
Sitting out in the audience right there by himself, it's very sad, is the guy who led this organization, GBH, for years brilliantly, including the brilliant hiring of me and Marjorie. Let's say we should just a round of applause
Oh my
for
God,
John
it's
Abbott.
John Abbott.
Who is really,
Hi.
he is
Great
an
to see you.
exceptional
Thank you
human
very
being.
much.
John,
Great
it's good to see you.
Wow, John Abbott from afar. Coming up after a quick break, we're going
He'll
to
be
joined-
playing in West Side Story, by the way. Next week is the...
That's right, Captain Von Trapp. We'll be joined by two local former federal employees who lost their jobs at the hands of an Elon Musk Doge email to tell us about their experience and come with warnings of what gutting the federal government of its expertise actually could mean for all of us. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Piles of executive orders, major cuts to the federal workforce, brewing legal challenges, and shifts in foreign alliances. It's been a whirlwind first month of President Trump's second term. Now he'll address Congress and the nation, Trump's first major speech since Inauguration Day. I'm Ari Shapiro. Join us for live special coverage from NPR News.
Tonight at 9 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. And The Huntington, presenting The Triumph of Love, Marivoux's beloved classic where mistaken identities, hilarious complications, and deeply felt desires collide. On stage March 7th through April 6th. huntingtontheater.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m., we'll be bringing you coverage of Mayor Wu before the House Oversight Committee with 3 other mayors. It will continue off and on throughout our show. Plus, at 1 o'clock, the Attorney General will join us here at the library in person for Ask the AG. Next Tuesday, the mayor will spend an hour with us after her performance tomorrow. That's next Tuesday, 11 to 12. Mayor Wu will be with us here at the library. For the past few weeks, among the more odious things that the Trump administration has done is mass firings at the hands of Elon Musk's Doge, a cruel and sometimes illegal attempt by the world's richest man to allegedly trim the fat of the federal government. In the abstract, it's easy to lose sight of what that all actually means for the real people doing critical work that keeps our government and society functioning and our people safe and informed. We're joined now live at the library by Jonathan Kamens. He's the lead cybersecurity expert working on veteransaffairs.gov, where he manages security for some of our veterans' most sensitive information. I should be clear, that's what his job was before a late-night email came into his inbox in the middle of February, firing him from his post. We're also joined on Zoom by Francis Tarazowitz, a meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Norton, until he met this same fate last Thursday, via email, of course, along with hundreds of other scientists at the agency. Jonathan, Francis, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Jonathan, let's start with you. Jim mentioned, of course, you were with the VA and you lost your job. So what were you doing and how did you find out?
So I was working as the information security lead for VA.gov. That's the portal for all veterans to access their benefits and services through the VA. And I was the only person in that role at VA, and I was a federal employee. There are a lot of contractors who help with that work, but there was one person on the federal side that was overseeing, and that was me. And I got an email on Valentine's Day at 8:54 p.m. informing me that I was terminated from my position because my services were no longer required, along with about 40 of my colleagues at the United States Digital Service.
And what did that mean in terms of your next paycheck, your health insurance, those things?
So I don't know if you're familiar with how the federal government works. You get paid off for your vacation time. So I got paid out for a week worth of vacation time that I had saved up, and I got paid for my last week of work, but the sick time is gone. I lost a bunch of vesting in my retirement account that I would have eventually gotten to keep if I had been staying with the government for long enough, which, to be clear, I expected and wanted to do. I went into public service because I wanted to serve, and I was, immediately deprived of that possibility, and I think it's pretty obvious by the fact that I'm currently on the air that I'm not going to be going back to work for the federal government anytime during the Trump administration.
And how about your health insurance?
I lose that in a couple weeks unless I start paying out of pocket for it. So
Before we bring Francis into this conversation with the same subject, what did the email say, Jonathan?
So it said that they were restructuring the United States Doge service. To be clear, I worked for the United States Digital Service,
which is what became Doge.
That's
right,
correct.
Yeah, okay.
They grafted Doge onto the side of the digital service, kind of like a tumor, and it was gradually eating away at us. And about 40 of my colleagues and I were just told that night, starting at about 7 p.m., the emails started coming out on a Friday night, because of course they want to maximize the cruelty. So they do it on a Friday night to ruin your whole weekend, and they do it after hours, so that and of course we had back channel chats going on while this was happening, and everyone was wondering, am I going to be next? Am I going to be included? Because they didn't send the emails out all at once.
So Francis, what were you doing before you got your email?
Sure thing. So I was a brand new meteorologist, had just started to learn the ropes of forecasting, populating our forecast grids, talking to emergency management about our forecast. Really just in my first month. Ironically enough, I had just gotten my first sort of month check-in with my supervisors, both of which, said that I was doing great, that I was a good fit for the agency, and they were excited to see me develop going forward. So it's just a huge slap in the face, getting that email at around 4 p.m. that afternoon. And in fact, I actually had to be the one to call my managers to let them know that I, in fact, was let off.
Francis, before you leave, because I want to make this clear, this is on the same day, from what I understand, the same day that you got a really high-quality evaluation was the same day that you were told what in this email?
That's correct. Yeah, so evaluation was great, and then I got the email and it said you're being terminated due to poor performance, lack of expertise and knowledge, which, totally contradicted not only that evaluation, but the hiring process that I'd taken, 6 to 8 months going through to even get set foot in the door of the National Weather Service.
And Francis, I understand you had to get rid of all your stuff within an hour by 5 o'clock?
That's right. Yeah, I had to leave the office, surrender cards and things like that.
And what about, I asked the same question before, what about your pay? Did you just get vacation, or did you get anything? Or, where was your next paycheck going to come from, if at all?
Yeah. Was paid. I think they included the vacation. Still, you're very new to the federal government, so I will have to definitely look into a lot of that. I do know that I'm going to be covered with health insurance-wise for the next 30 days or so as I look to find another option here.
So can we go back to you, Jonathan? I assume that Elon Musk would never fire you if you had any value.
That's an interesting assumption there, Jim.
So when I read about what you did and how critical the function was, seriously, what's the hole that's left behind? What should veterans, for example, be concerned about, should they be, by your disappearance?
I mean, the way I would put it is I have both micro and macro concerns. So at the micro level, I don't think that my department at the VA is going to be able to replace me. And there's two reasons for that. First of all, because there's executive order that Trump signed, which says when they resume allowing agencies to hire people, every agency has to fire 4 people before they're allowed to hire 1 person. Right now, I worked with a bunch of very dedicated, competent public servants over at VA, and they were all overworked. Like, we were understaffed, under-resourced constantly. So they're not going to be able to fire 4 people in order to hire someone to replace me. So the position is going to remain vacant. The other reason I'm worried about them being able to bring new leadership in to do what I was doing is because I was brought in from the private sector. I worked for tech startups in Boston for more than 30 years before I went into public service. And I don't think anyone in the private sector right now is going to want to go work for the government with everything that's going on. I was brought in specifically because of my expertise.
If I was a veteran, should I worry about the privacy of health and other information that relates to me without you there?
Well, so there's 2 reasons why you should. First of all, because the information security posture of the site is going to degrade because they don't have adequate staffing or leadership. And that over time, it will become worse and worse, and eventually there will be an incident. That's just inevitable. If you don't maintain the cybersecurity of a website, eventually someone breaks into it. And the second reason I think you should worry is because DOJ is marauding through the federal government, accessing data that they really shouldn't be accessing in every agency. And there's a lot of very sensitive private data at VA about people's diagnoses, about people's benefits, about people's disabilities, their bank account numbers, their social security numbers. The VA has all that data. So absolutely, I think veterans should be worried both about the risk of a break-in and also about the risk of these DOJ people abusing that data.
You know, Jonathan, I read where you had an interview with one of the DOJ people that asked you basically why, if you were such a hot shot, you weren't in the private sector.
Yep.
So that was their assumption. What'd you tell them?
I mean, I told them I didn't care about the money. They said to me, if you could do all that stuff that you claim you're doing over at VA, why aren't you working in the private sector? You could make twice as much money. And I said, I don't care about the money. I wanted to be a public servant. That's why I took this job. And that was the truth. And I don't think they understand that. Like, that mentality of, people would go into government even though they will make less money from it because they want to serve, I think is alien to the people at DOJ.
That's the voice of Jonathan Kamens. He was the lead cybersecurity expert working at va.gov. We're also talking on Zoom to Francis Tarazowitz, who was a meteorologist, a new meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Norton. Francis, I heard you talk about what the reduction in staffing would mean to the work that your operation was doing. Can you describe that to us?
Line of defense, severe weather, hazardous weather. We communicate with the emergency management community, first responders. So a loss of staff would mean, just less of the ability to support some of those critical mission functions. I also want to mention, we have numerous folks that are already planning on retiring within the next 1 to 3 years. So we already had very similar to other areas of the government. We already had critical staffing shortages. So this is only going to exacerbate things. So, this could start to affect, say, weather warnings. This could affect the National Weather Service's main mission of protecting lives and property.
I've been reading a lot lately where some agencies are getting a lot more cutting and DOJ attention than other ones, and there's a theory that some of this is political. One of them involving the Weather Service is that the president is a climate change denier. We all remember the incident where he was trying to claim a hurricane, get the Sharpie, and the hurricane was going here, it wasn't going there. He doesn't like you guys over at the National Weather Service. Is there a sense that that's part of what's going on with you?
No sense with me personally. Ironically enough, the Weather Service, we really don't do a whole lot with climate data. We're sort of your day in, day out weather forecast. Our forecasts only go out to 7 days. So I suppose a climate change related attack on the Weather Service would be, misguided in a fundamental way.
Okay.
When we knew you guys were coming, you used the word cruelty a couple times, and I have to, Jonathan, I know I speak for Marjorie. We subscribe to that notion completely. Do you sit home and say, not in addition to how you were treated, when you read these polls and see that tens of thousands of people exactly like you, many of whom have families, have kids, have other responsibilities, have given up income because they really wanted to serve in the federal government. And the vast majority of people who supported the person who's responsible for this seem to not be fazed in the slightest. His support is roughly the same as it was. Does it bother you that fellow residents, fellow citizens, at least as of this moment, don't seem to give a damn about what happened to you and Francis?
I wouldn't say that it bothers me so much as it worries me, right? So I feel like in this country, we are as divided as we've ever been in my life. And, I think I don't really see an easy way to eliminate that division and that partisanship. And I feel like, there's a joke that, facts have a liberal bias, like that joke. And I don't feel like, I don't feel like the people who are fans of the current administration maybe actually understand what's happening, and I don't feel like they understand how it's going to impact them. Because the things that Trump is doing and the things that Doge is doing are not just going to hurt Democrats. They're going to hurt everyone. Especially, there's, veterans very strongly, not overwhelmed universally, but there's a lot of support for the current administration among veterans.
And that 30% of the federal workforce, by the way.
That's correct, and they're going to be hurt too. I wish I knew how we could bring people together and help people understand the harm that's going to be caused before the harm is caused. Like, I don't want people to be hurt, and I don't care whether they support my guy or the other guy. I just don't want people to be hurt, and that's why that's why I'm here today to talk about this, because I want to give people the heads up that their hurt is coming, and they need to step up, because that's the only way to put a stop to it.
Francis, Jonathan is more grown up than I am. I would feel horrible if I were in your spot, and my fellow citizens, for the most part, so far, don't give a damn. Does it bother you, or have you moved past that too? Or shouldn't say too, but.
I guess the one thing that does bug me is, how could we as like the Weather Service have, more clearly communicated our mission? The Weather Service, we're not making any policy, we're not enforcing any laws, we're simply there to advise and to serve the citizens of our, that are under our weather forecast office. So, when I'm up late at night, after I got laid off, I'm just kind of thinking like, how could we have done that better to make it more clear how much, we're there just simply to help, We're not some like deep state, we're just a bunch of sort of weather nerds that are really interested in serving as many people as we can, and how could we have made that more clear? So I guess the strategy now is just, communicate the mission going forward, and hopefully, it doesn't come to, people, experiencing natural disasters on their own without warning. I really hope it doesn't come to that for a larger conversation to occur.
So, Francis, what do you do now? Do you take a little breather and then start sending out resumes? Or, because you mentioned in one of the stories I read about you, it's hard to get a job at the National Weather Service, and this was something you really wanted to do. So, what's next?
I'm not sure. I mean, there are a plethora of private sector companies out there, but they all do depend on the Weather Service's data and NOAA's data as well. So, they're going to start being affected as well. This could honestly upend the entire field of meteorology in the United States.
How so? Because not being able to get the information fast enough or in enough areas, or what do you mean?
Sure. I mean, the Weather Service controls and owns and operates the weather observation networks across the country, be it satellite, surface observation networks, radars, and, private companies, they ingest these data and they use it for their own, specified purposes. But for me, I wanted to go into the public sector because I wanted to increase my reach. I wanted to help as many people as possible. So sure, I could potentially get paid a bit more in the private sector, but my reach would really be narrowed to like a very niche sort of, market or, commodities, things like that.
These are the kind of people, by the way, I hope people are reflecting. These are the kind of people who decided to commit themselves to public service through the feds and have to go home at night and watch cable television shows and hear the leaders of this country talk about how people don't work that hard, they don't show up at work, they may not even exist. I mean, it's so disrespectful. And the other thing, I'm thinking about analogizing this. We've talked a lot on the show, Jonathan, about how, for example, in the mass deportation thing, even though it hasn't happened yet, a lot of people fear it's going to happen to them if it hasn't. How do your coworkers feel who are lucky enough, in quotes, to still be there when they see how somebody like you and your colleagues were treated? Does fear trickle down, or do they just keep their eyes ahead, or what do they do?
I mean, people are terrified. Like, no one knows who's going to be fired next. No one knows which agency is going to be stripped for parts next. And people don't know whether they're going to be able to keep doing the work. Having said that, I have lots of colleagues and friends who are dedicated public servants. And I hope that they will keep doing the work for as long as they can keep helping the public. And I also hope that they have in mind what their red lines are, so that if they are asked to do something which crosses one of their lines, that's the point at which they will resign or otherwise
A couple of
push
your
back.
colleagues did resign, did they not?
I mean, 21 people from the United States Digital Service resigned last week.
Why?
Because they weren't willing to work with Doge. And the message came down from Doge that the sort of firewall that had stood between Doge and USDS was about to be broken down, and the USDS people were going to
Digital
start being
services,
that's
the
correct.
predecessor.
They were going to start having to collaborate with Doge projects, or the Doge engineers were going to start collaborating on their projects. And those 21 people said, no, I'm not going to do that because I've seen what Doge is doing, and I won't be a part of that.
You know, when you were interviewed by the person from Doge, it wasn't Big Balls, was it? The guy who calls
No,
himself
it
Big
was
Balls?
not.
Okay, okay.
Marjorie was hoping.
Yeah. Did that person tell you their name and their affiliation or what? Because I know that there's been criticism they're very secretive.
Yes, they did identify.
They
I
did.
yes.
Okay. And was this person 19, 21, 23?
I was interviewed by two people. One of them was the guy who's been identified in the media as Cole Killian, I think his
Okay.
last name is. And the other one is the current federal chief information officer, Greg something or other. I don't remember his last name.
And were they pleasant to talk to? What was it like, the interview?
So the funny thing is that my interview was perfectly collegial up until that last question, which I thought was a little bit hostile. But many of my colleagues, in their interviews, they were very antagonistic, and they felt that they were asked politically tainted questions which were inappropriate. I wasn't. And
they weren't.
We talked about this afterwards, my colleagues and I, and we had no idea why some people's interviews were so hostile and some people's interviews, like mine, were completely innocuous.
I just got a text from someone who says she has a client who's a psychiatrist at the VA who was asked to write 5 things he did during the past week or be fired, and she said he sees 60 patients a week, which is a lot of patients for a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And they're very complicated cases, obviously, at the VA because of service in the war, sometimes combat PTSD issues.
You know, Francis, one last thing from me to you is I'm sure you know better than I that a judge has stayed, or at least declared, that some of the mass firing of probationary employees is illegal. It's unclear what it's going to lead to. If it led to a finding that Doge acted illegally and there was an offer of people to return, would you go back to your job after what happened to you?
100% yes.
Why?
You know,
why?
To serve the American people, to advance the science of meteorology, you know, to put us on the world stage as, you know, a world-class country for weather forecasting and understanding. You know, administrations come and go, and the weather is just always going to be, in my opinion, the number one threat to the American people. So they need to continue to know what to do in the event of extreme weather and how to prepare for it.
Would you return to service?
I would, but they're not going to ask me. That was made clear to me. I have contacts still in VA, and I was told once I started doing public media appearances, telling people what was happening, that lowered the odds of me being asked back to zero.
So why'd you do it then?
Because I thought it was necessary to warn people about what's happening. And
Even if it was a personal sacrifice?
I mean, this is how I can serve now. I was serving before within the VA, and now I'm serving by letting people know that there is danger. This is serious. Like the time for waiting and seeing is over. We can't wait and see what the Trump administration and Doge are going to do. We know what they're going to do. It's bad. They're already doing it. People need to push back and resist.
I have to say I admire both of you, and I know that I hope everybody listening supports you. We wish you luck and good things in the future. And I really, in both of your cases, admire your willingness to speak out. Thank you so much for doing it here.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
very
both
much
of you.
for being with us.
Thanks.
We've been speaking with Jonathan Kamens, former elite of the United States Digital Service, a lead cybersecurity expert, and Jonathan Tarazowitz, a meteorologist. Both were recently fired as part of Doge's efforts. Thank you both for your time
Thanks so
today.
much.
Coming up after a quick break, there's just enough time for our 2 more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, President Trump is set to make the first congressional address of his new term, and the Massachusetts delegation is inviting guests who are meant to send a message. And transportation advocates are pushing back on Boston's move to get rid of the Boylston Street bus lane. Those stories in all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And VinFin, working to empower individuals with mental health conditions and disabilities. Stories of strength and resilience will be shared at the VinFin Film Festival, March 15th at GBH Studios. More at vinfin.org. And Regal Music Theatre, presenting The Magic of Ireland, a St. Patrick's Day concert. Talent from Broadway and Boston perform traditional melodies, comedy, step dancing, and more. March 8th and 9th, regalmusictheatre.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Time for two more things, little segment where we dedicate a few minutes before the 1 o'clock news to a couple things that didn't make it into the show, at least the way we wanted to. Marjorie, what's your one more thing?
Well, why don't you go first today?
Wow,
Well,
that's
it'll work out
radical.
better for my plan.
Oh, it will?
Yes.
Okay, as much as I'm not looking forward to watching Trump tonight, though I am looking forward to tomorrow's congressional hearing on how a handful of Democratic-led mayors are dealing with immigration, including, as we know, Mayor Wu, putting aside the presence of New York City's Eric Adams, who should be in front of a judge as a criminal defendant rather than in front of Congress as a Trump sycophant. The mayors of Chicago, Denver, and ours are, I think, strong people who I'm convinced will not make the same mistake those three university presidents did when they appeared in front of this committee, or the Education Committee, I guess it was, including Harvard's Claudine Gay. Though Mayor Wu may have already made one mistake, today's Globe has a story about how she's been preparing in part with the help of a $950 an hour law firm whose bill could rise to $250,000. And with me, it's not the money, it's the over-lawyering, which allegedly did in Claudine Gay as well, something that those close to Gay, as I say was unhelpful to her. Emma Platoff writes this piece in the Globe, and she makes the point that I totally agree with. Wu's got a really good story about crime in this city, about how the homicide rate is down, and how the Trust Act, and that's the thing that will allow cops in our city to cooperate if there's a criminal warrant, but bars them from cooperating with immigration authorities, federal otherwise. She makes the point in the story is it's humane, and because it allows undocumented people who are either witnesses or victims of crimes to come forward without fear. Wu has told those stories many times. She is more than capable of doing it, and I hope the outside lawyers step back. And again, we will start bringing it to you live at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I think it's an important day for Boston and the country.
Well, the reason I wanted you to go first is because you just said Mayor Wu is going to be testifying tomorrow. She gave birth in January. She's a nursing mother.
Kid was right here.
That's right. And I don't know if she's bringing the newborn little girl to Congress with her or not, but if she's a nursing mother and the baby's not in a bottle, she may need to. Mm-hmm. So if she gets any criticism tomorrow, if she does bring the baby, I'm just anticipating the double standard here that often occurs when women bring their children to the job versus like
I know where you're
Elon Musk bringing his children everywhere, including into the Oval Office when they're having very serious discussions about the budget with all these reporters. We got that little 4-year-old kid. I guess the kid defaced the desk, the Resolute desk. Mr. Germaphobe, Donald Trump sent it out to be sandblasted or something like that. But, he brings this kid everywhere. They got the kid on the shoulders. The mother doesn't like it, by the way. She wants his child to stay out of the limelight. But he brings the kid on his shoulders. He's at all these events. And it's interesting how he evades criticism. He's in the Oval Office in a T-shirt, a hat, some kind of grubby, pants on. He doesn't get criticized for that, whereas Zelensky, in the middle of a war to save the lives of his fellow citizens and himself, gets criticized for not wearing a suit to the White House. But it just drives me crazy, the double standard about women who bring their kids to work and men who bring their kids to work. The men who bring their kids to work are the fathers of the year, and the women who bring their kids to work to get a babysitter or a nanny. I mean, like Katie Porter, she's got a single mom out in California.
That's right.
She's got 3 kids. God forbid she should have some snafu with the babysitter and she has to bring her kid along. Why are they doing that? So anyway, that's my thing. How come what's good for the goose is not good for the gander, or is it backwards? What's good for the gander is not good for the goose.
I think we got the point, regardless of whether it is a gander or a goose.
All right.
I like that.
Okay.
And I'm glad you went second.
Well, thank you very much. You used to remember when Charlie Baker did it. Charlie Baker would say he was going to a soccer game when he was running for governor. That drove me crazy because if you had a soccer game and you were a woman, you know where you're going?
Yeah.
You were going to get a root canal. That was your line. I'm going to get a root canal. You couldn't say you're going to a soccer game or you'd have hell to pay at the office. So that's my little I get upset about that,
That
Jim.
was beautifully done.
Anyway,
What's
what
coming
are we
up?
doing? After
John
the news,
King.
Oh, John King is after the new news. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Something on GBH News that just wouldn't be possible without listener support. So, while you're listening, consider pitching in $10 or $20 a month as a GBH sustainer and help make it all happen. Give at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the law firm of Davis Malm, building client relationships one transaction at a time. Learn more at davismalm.com. Davis Malm, lean, agile, strategic. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. President Trump will get a celebratory reception from Republicans when he addresses Congress tonight. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports Democrats, though, are planning ways to rebuke his aggressive agenda.
For the president's speech, Democrats will bring guests who up until a few weeks ago were federal workers, including the former Inspector General for the Veterans Affairs Department. The guests also include several military veterans who worked for the IRS, the Defense Department, and Homeland Security. With thousands of federal worker jobs cut, veterans have been swept up in the Trump administration's dismantling of large sections of the federal government. Democrats say they want to highlight those job cuts as one part of a larger protest message expected tonight. Claudia Grisales, NPR News.
President Trump's move to impose and raise tariffs on some imported goods has businesses bracing for change in manufacturing-dependent Tupelo, Mississippi. NPR's Debbie Elliott reports it's also Trump country, so expectations are high.
With 1 in 5 jobs in manufacturing, the question is whether higher tariffs will shake things up in Tupelo, says local business recruiter David Rumbarger with the Community Development Foundation.
You know, business likes a stable environment, so uncertainty does cause a little bit of pain.
That has businesses like Hawkeye Industries, a sheet metal fabricator, bracing for higher prices. CEO Brian Hawkins thinks it will be worth the pain.
As investment in new plant and equipment comes into the United States, which is what the intent is, I think we'll all be fine. And in the long run, we're going to be a lot better off.
Hawkins says he has confidence in President Trump's plan. Debbie Elliott, NPR News, Tupelo, Mississippi.
Senators on the Foreign Relations Committee are questioning the Trump administration's pick for top State Department jobs. NPR's Michelle Kellerman has more.
Democratic Senator Chris Coons had one simple question for Trump's pick to be the next NATO ambassador, Matthew Whitaker.
Does it serve our national interest to abandon Ukraine?
Well, what's in our national interest, obviously, is a broad question. We need...
Mr. Whitaker, I have 3 minutes, not time for broad questions.
Coons says the NATO alliance should be pulling in the same direction, unlike what Trump is doing. Democrats are also raising alarms about the way the Trump administration canceled contracts and dismantled the lead U.S. aid agency as they question the nominees to be the Deputy Secretary of State and the Deputy for Management Issues, Christopher Landau and Michael Regas. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
Wall Street sharply lower. The Dow is down 619 points, NASDAQ down 117. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The city of Boston has hired the law firm Cahill, Gordon & Reindel to help prep Boston Mayor Michelle Wu for tomorrow's hearing before Congress. The mayor's office reports that the firm is being paid $950 per hour and is expected to pay up to $650,000 for legal work related to the hearing, the committee investigation, as well as production of documents. And Lesley University and Bunker Hill Community College have announced a new joint admissions transfer program for Bunker Hill students to gain admission to Lesley University while still enrolled at Bunker Hill. Participants in the program would complete their associate degree at Bunker Hill and then transition to Lesley to complete their bachelor's degree, either on campus or online. And many city and town officials throughout Massachusetts are bracing for 4 years of March Madness, and they're not referring to college basketball right now. Last night, the city of Cambridge City Council voted to declare the city a sanctuary city for transgender and non-binary people. Council also warned that millions of dollars in federal funding could be in serious jeopardy over cuts being made by the Trump administration. Cambridge receives $23 million in federal funding, with millions more going to independent programs like the Cambridge Housing Authority and Cambridge Health Alliance. Last night, officials prepared residents for an uncertain future. In sports, the Bruins host Nashville at the Garden tonight. Exhibition baseball. Red Sox are playing Pittsburgh this afternoon in Florida. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, committed to giving job listings increased visibility with relevant candidates through its sponsored jobs feature. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
He is Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow with special coverage of Mayor Wu in Washington. She's going to be testifying about immigration policies in the city of Boston. Plus, Nancy Gertner, retired federal judge, Michael Curry from the NAACP. And from 1 to 2, Ask the Attorney General with Andrea Campbell will be with us. On Thursday, we're going to be joined by Peter Wolf, not here, but in Brighton. Boy, there's a long list here, Jim.
Keep going.
And
He's written a
Friday,
fabulous memoir about his years in the rock and roll and blues world. Go
all
ahead.
about his marriage to Faye Dunaway, which
There's
I found
a lot
fascinating
on that,
there. And Friday, we'll be back at the Boston Public Library. Gina McCarthy used to run the EPA under Barack Obama, and Marty Barron, formerly editor of the Boston Globe and the Washington Post, which is being badly damaged, many of us believe, by its owner, Joe Bezos.
Whoever he is.
Yes. And don't forget, on Monday, we'll be subjected to Jim's annual rant about daylight saving time.
You know why? Because I'm a leader.
Okay, you're a
You
leader.
forgot also, the governor will join us next Wednesday at the library.
All right. God.
So it's a big week.
Enough already.
Okay, fine. We're joined now on Zoom by CNN, so there's no time left for him.
Poor John
on
King.
Zoom by CNN's
He's here.
chief national
We're
correspondent.
going on and on.
John King, how are you, John? Good to see you.
You want me to sing a little Jay Giles band?
Yeah, why don't you? Thank you for your patience.
You
That
should read the
litany.
book, by the way. The book's coming out next week. It is
Looking
great.
forward to it.
It's great.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. You know, when I was a kid, they used to jam sometime in like a warehouse out in Brighton, and people would get lounge chairs and just sit around and listen. It was pretty cool.
Oh, that's
God.
great.
And some people have texted today to say that how they saw Jay Giles. It was their first concert at the Garden when it used to be the Garden and all that kind of stuff.
And they pretend to remember it.
That they claim that they remember it. Yeah. So John King, speaking of not remembering things, we were talking with our listeners earlier, and many of them were very relieved that the dry January is over and they could use some alternative methods of coping with tonight's speech by President Trump, or they're not going to watch it at all because they're still too traumatized. So what do we expect tonight? Do we expect, what do we expect?
Look, I think what I would say to anybody who expects anything different is please shake yourself.
Yeah.
In the sense that, people said, well, he said all these things in the campaign, but he wasn't going to do any of those things. Well, what is he doing? Just about everything he said in the campaign. He's going after the people he doesn't like. He's implementing policies he said he would implement, even if a lot of people question the wisdom of those policies. He had Elon Musk at his side at the end of the campaign. He has Elon Musk at his side now throughout the government. And so here's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for a newly elected president. He's done this before, but a newly elected president, technically not the State of the Union, to say hello to the country after 43 days in office, and outline your agenda, what you hope to accomplish. And if you're Donald Trump or any American president in the last 20 years, really, knowing that you won a very closely contested election, a chance to maybe reach out and say, I know many of you didn't vote for me, but I'm your president. I would expect none of that. I would expect I'm going to close the border. I'm right. If you disagree with me, you're wrong, because that's what he's done every step of the way. Right now, a man whose number one mission was to lower costs has just started a trade war with our northern and southern neighbors that inevitably is going to, at least in the short term, increase costs. So he is doing. We often say we're supposed to applaud politicians who do what they said they were going to do. He's doing what he said he was going to do. And that means a lot of turmoil, a lot of tumult, a lot of economic disruption. And I would not expect the tone to be anything tonight except the defiance and the I'm right and I'm going to do it my way that we've seen since he started.
I want to get back to how the Democrats are going to respond to this. I don't mean the speech from the senator from Michigan. I mean, in general, how they're responding. But since you brought it up, whenever there's a question that I can't, this is true in politics, that I have no idea what the answer is, I said, I'll ask John King. So another news person in Boston texted me this morning and asked me this question. So I'll ask you, because I said I couldn't answer it. And it's a follow-up to what you just said. Okay, so he said he's going to lower prices on day one. He is aware of the fact that some of the key items that people care about, gas, eggs in particular, are going up. That's one. Two, I'm assuming at least privately his advisors tell him, Kamala Harris is right. When you do these tariffs, it's going to raise the costs of the same Americans who you said you're going to lower the egg prices and all the other stuff for. So that's going to happen. And because you're doing the tariffs, the 50% of the country who has a 401k or a 403b has seen the stock market go down since you said you were doing the tariffs by almost, I'm looking now, 1,100 to 1,200 points in a day and a half. Now, since all those are facts, why is he doing this?
Well, the interesting thing, Jim and Marjorie, is that trade is the issue on which he has perhaps been most consistent. You can go back to the 1970s, and Donald Trump was talking about tariffs back when he was a Democrat, before he became an independent, before he became a Republican.
Right.
He has been talking about this the entire time. Look, there's, as we say a lot, there's often a nugget of, that's right, or that's worthy of conversation in everything Trump does, in the sense that the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is right. That American manufacturing now doesn't create a lot of things that we need sometimes. Look what happened during COVID and PPE. Look what, light manufacturing and things like that. So does the American manufacturing base need a renaissance? Yes. Is tariffs the way to get there? Especially against, a lot of people understand tariffs against China, for example, and maybe occasional tariffs when you have a fight. We've had disputes over the years with our Canadian neighbors, for example, over dairy products and over lumber products and things like that. So you have sort of, targeted conversations that may or may not lead to tariffs on one item that you're squabbling about. However, this broad sweeping tariffs against what is the most successful economic partnership in the world, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, the most successful economic partnership in the world. And I was just in Canada, and they are just aghast. They just do not get this. It's like not only they think that it's bad economics, bad math, and horrible manners. Here's our friend, our neighbor, a border that has been, we don't need an army along that border. We don't need along the border because they're like us. They're a democracy. They're friendly. They're polite. They have a thriving economy, and we trade back and forth. They simply don't get it at all. But Prime Minister Trudeau says I have to retaliate. And so, yes, it's going to raise costs. It's going to raise costs on cars. It's going to raise costs on my beer, for God's sake, aluminum cans and all that. But it's, I was just at a steel factory in Canada, and they do a lot of work. American steel comes across the border. They do specialty fabrication. Then they send it back here. The kind of steel that you use when you build hospitals, when you build right where you are in the Boston Public Library. Look around you at the fabricated steel, in that wing of the library that they've built. When you're building new schools, new roads, new bridges. And they all say the costs are going to go up. It's inevitable. Their costs are going to go up, and they say they're going to lose jobs. Because they're not going to be trading as much with the United States, and they think some Americans are going to lose their jobs because they're not going to be trading as much with Mexico and Canada. In the long run, this is the strongest economy in the world. But to your point about prices, look, it was naive, and it's just Donald Trump. It's just Trumpian to say I'm going to do it all on day one. He did say it, so you can hold him accountable for it, but it's also unrealistic and unfair to say it should happen on day one. But now we're on day 43, and he's making it worse, not better. That's the political challenge.
And to just continue this for one more second, I would assume that what he would do is the following, because of that litany I gave to you, is lie again and say, I was going to reinstitute the tariffs today, but just like a month ago, whenever it was, I've gotten huge concessions, even though he hadn't, and as a result, we'll postpone them a month, and he postpones them until egg prices come down and other things that matter, and then he does them. But it's either that he is consciously working against himself, which is impossible, or he continues to believe he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and have egg prices be $20 a dozen, and he wouldn't lose a voter, right? I mean,
it doesn't make sense sometimes. You ask me to explain him sometimes, and I'm sorry I'm at a loss.
Okay.
I will say this again. Do we need a better immigration system? Of course we do. That's an issue that's more on the southern border than the northern border. Is it important that all of our neighbors help crack down on the international smuggling of fentanyl across our borders? Dear God, of course it is. I will tell you this: when I was in Canada, just on a fluke, a coincidence, I ran into Canadian and U.S. teams that were meeting on this very issue. It was DEA and ICE and Customs and Border Patrol and the FBI. So 3 federal agencies meeting with the Canadian counterparts on this very issue of fentanyl. They both said, both the Canadian representatives and the U.S. representatives, a quick conversation. I ran into them at a restaurant, walked into a little room. They were having a private dinner and talked to them for a little bit. They both said that this is to be admired around the world, that this is the best level of cooperation in the world. And yes, it's a problem. But I went through the port of Vancouver, and they have these container carts out, and the port CEO was telling me how they're trying to do new ways to scrub them to make sure fentanyl's not being smuggled in. It's a huge problem. Obviously, it's a cancer on our children and a cancer on our society. But they say the cooperation is as good as it can be, and they're constantly meeting to make it better. And Trump says it sucks, forgive my language, but he says it's broken. The people doing it say it's not. This is one of the issues you deal with him all the time. He says the economy, first time he came in, he said the economy was dead. He inherited a pretty vibrant economy from Barack Obama. Now he says the economy was dead again. Our economy has potholes and struggles, but it's the strongest economy in the world. He inherited that from Joe Biden. So one of the challenges on a night like this when he's going to give a speech is a lot of what he says, sadly, is not going to be true. But a lot of people out there, because he repeats it and repeats it and repeats it, they believe it. A lot of people out there think that there's all this fentanyl rushing across the border from Canada. Mm-hmm. There's some, and they're working on it, but it's nowhere near the size of the problem he says it is.
Speaking of the constant lies, which are almost every time he talks these days, do you know what's going to happen fact-checking wise? I mean, maybe that's a different department than you, but I think the fact-checking is so important, but it often does not happen, or it can happen so long.
We have an amazing team here, and Marjorie, it's growing. There's a lot of downsizing in journalism. Fact checking is a job security guarantee. And the guy who heads our fact check team here, Daniel Dale,
he's great.
He's great.
He's a fantastic guy. Whenever I pass him in the hall, I just always say, you got another day guaranteed job security.
Yeah.
And ask him if he needs an espresso. Daniel's going to be up late tonight and all day tomorrow and the day after.
Good. So we have a little change, I guess. This morning, President Zelensky from Ukraine says he expressed regret about what happened last week in the Oval Office because Trump officials are demanding an apology from him, although I really didn't think he had anything to apologize for. But in any case, I don't understand, though, because it seems to me the security assurances were the big deal that Zelensky wanted. Trump was not willing to give them security assurances. So I don't know how this deal can go ahead, minerals or no minerals.
Unclear on that. Zelensky did say he regret essentially that it ended up being a confrontation. He did not say, I apologize, and we'll see what the Trump people think of that. But again, if you want to talk about election to have consequences, and we live in a very different country now. Our country stands for very different things right now, whether we agree or disagree. The United States of America stands for very different things right now than it did 44 days ago. This has been the best 44 days of Vladimir Putin's life. Or at least his life in the last decade or 20 years, in that the president of the United States publicly berates the leader of Ukraine in the Oval Office, and then says he's freezing U.S. military aid, U.S. assistance to Ukraine at a critical moment when everyone is trying to figure out, can we have a ceasefire? Can we have some negotiations? Can we have something? So we are, the United States of America is now taking the side of the dictator who invaded his democratic neighbor and is trying to steal its territory. That's what we tell our kids, right? That's what we tell our kids. Look up to the President of the United States because he's for the guy who's trying to steal things. Okay, but that's where we are. That's where we are. And so one of the key points tonight is, we talk about this a lot, is at what point will there be a point at which any of these Republicans who for years have said Biden wasn't doing enough.
No.
Let's help Ukraine more. Putin is the bad guy. I thank you, Jim. I know. You are correct, sir. You're correct about daylight savings time too.
Thank you kindly.
So hold on. You think that is there a point? I mean, isn't there anything this guy could do that would?
Anything Zelensky can do?
No, anything Trump could do that would get some of these Republicans. I mean, Murkowski has
there are a few. Tom Tillis in North Carolina has said that Zelensky's the good guy here, and he wishes that everybody would just that you can't take that meeting away. So he's just wishing everybody could just take a breath and move on. Right? The bad days happen. Let's move on and remember who the good guy and the bad guy is here. That's what a lot of them are trying to do. And I get in the age of Trump, that's probably the best a Republican can do. Right? Okay, let's just forget that happened and get back to the idea that Ukraine's the good guy and Russia's the bad guy. But Trump doesn't view it that way. Trump does not view it that way. And he's the president of the United States. And his vice president clearly joined in in the let's beat up Zelensky in a public way. I do think we talk often, we look at Trump. I look down at the table at the fire in front of us at the moment all the time. The impact of what's happening around the world is actually quite significant. When I was in Canada, what they are saying is that, this is a wake-up call to us. 80%, 90% of our trade is with the United States. We need to find new friends. We need to find new markets. This is bad for our economy. And, we thought this was a partnership. It's clearly not. And so for the good of our people and the good of our economy, they're going to now look to send more to Asia. And whether Trump changes policies or the next American president comes along and says, let's go back to the way it was, those products might not be available to us because Canada may have found another market for them. Look at what's happening in Europe, where the president of the European Union today is saying we need to rearm Europe. We cannot count on the United States of America anymore. So every action has a reaction, right? And the reaction in our neighborhood in Canada and across the Atlantic, the NATO allies and the European allies are saying that, that is not a defense. It used to be the lead partner. The United States was the lead partner of the superpower. Now they're saying it's not a reliable partner. Yeah. And we have to do things on our own. And I think we are at the beginning of a conversation that, 2, 5, 10, and even 25 years from now, people are going to look back at this moment and see people are just deciding that they have to make fundamental new choices about how they work, how their economies work, how their national security works, because the bottom line to them is the United States cannot be trusted.
John, you said a minute ago, every action gets a reaction. What exactly is the reaction that you're able to see among Democrats? I don't mean those on the margin, the Chris Murphys. We had Seth Moulton on yesterday, who has been more than outspoken about that meeting in the office, the firing of the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all that sort of stuff. I'm talking about Democrats as a whole. Are they still working on a message, find the best issue? Or, I mean, what's going on internally that we don't know about, John King?
I think you see it pretty transparently that it's a work in progress. I do think you just hit on something that I think is important, though. There are some people like, Chris Murphy, who's one of the people who is starting to look down the road a little bit. Can I have a more national profile here, right? But I would also look at people like, what do we know they're good at or they have expertise at? Seth Moulton, David Petraeus is former right-hand man in Iraq, national security experience. So I think Democrats are looking for people to say, here is a trustworthy guy. You should listen to him on these national security issues, right? You see Elizabeth Warren, I believe she's going to bring fired federal workers with her to the speech. Right? She's one of Democrats being fired. Elizabeth Warren, whether some people listening, she's your senator for many of you listening, but some of you might think she's too liberal, or you might think this, or you might think she's perfect. But she is somebody who fights for the working class, who has an identity of fighting against the banks, for consumer protections, and for the working person, right? You can agree or disagree with her, but that's her portfolio, right? So I think you want to see people like that who have some credibility and some state. That's what the Democrats, until they have a leader, and they don't right now, you want to have, I think it is smart of the Democrats to try to find people who have a portfolio on an important issue, working class issues, tax issues, ethics issues, national security issues, and have those people step forward and try to build a credibility base, if you will, outside of their own. Try to build your base. Try to get Republicans to listen. Try to get more independents to listen by making whatever case you want to make against Trump. And I do think that's, we just used 2 Massachusetts examples there, but there are others around the country. And until it's going to be 3 years until we're into the primaries, right? To have a leader of the Democratic Party, a nominee for the Democratic Party, that I think this is going to be sort of a little bit of whack-a-mole. Sounds insulting. I don't necessarily mean it that way, but episodic, right? Someone's going to rise up. Someone's going to try to make a case. That person may or may not get traction. In the meantime, it's, if you're looking for the letterhead is Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, because they are the top 2 Democrats in Congress. But I think there are a lot of Democrats out in the country. I picked this up when I travel and when I talk to people I met traveling last year, who are looking for new faces, who think those need to come from the heartland. Watch this. Democrats have struggled in rural areas and in farm states. Watch how this tariffs things play out. It helps some farmers. Some farmers like tariffs. If you're a rancher, you want to sell more American beef here in America, you probably like the tariffs. If you grow soybeans and you export a lot of your stuff, now you're in that blender, right? You got these headwinds in you. So watch how all this plays out, and let's see. It's a reset opportunity for Democrats to find new voices. And I think that's one of the things I'm fascinated by. Who finds a way to get some traction on the most important issues, national security issues and economic issues?
Yeah, but one of the questions, I'm not arguing with you, but your timeline, what did you say? It's 40 some days into Trump, and there'll be a nominee out of the primaries in 3 years. I mean, he is moving with such intense speed, and Congress is attempting to. The question is, what's going to be left to work with? And that relates to a budget question, John. I know they've approved these frameworks, $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, $2 trillion in cuts. Trump says no Medicaid cuts, no Social Security cuts, no Medicare cuts. However, here is his right-hand man, the short version, please, of right-hand man Elon Musk on with Joe Rogan yesterday. Here's what he said about Social Security.
I mean, Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
Now, how do they? I assume he's telling the truth, and he seems to have a lot of latitude here. How do the Republicans achieve this $2 trillion in cuts without cutting the things that Donald Trump says they will never touch?
Well, you'd have to eliminate the Pentagon. You think I'm joking? And I don't mean, obviously you're not going to eliminate the Pentagon, but there are only certain places where there's that much money, right? There are only certain places where there are that much money, and so Trump, it's near impossible. I mean, you could eliminate food stamps, you could eliminate aid to public education, even you can eliminate all foreign aid, and you're just not going to get there. The amount of money they're talking about, that sounds like a lot, right? What I just said, we're going to eliminate all aid to public education. We're going to eliminate all, food stamps. It's not going to work. There's not enough math there. So and again, there have been people over the years who have talked about structural reforms or raising retirement ages or means testing benefits for wealthy people like Elon Musk, to get Social Security. Do you get it or not? But if that used to be the third rail of American politics. If you're an elderly American or an American in your 50s, and Social Security is part of your, or in some cases, all of your retirement money, you're paying for your rent. When you hear somebody say Ponzi scheme and that person has access to the Oval Office and the President of the United States, that's the kind of thing that can get Republicans in trouble. That is one of the dynamics of the first 43 days. There's nothing to suggest that Donald Trump has lost his support of Elon Musk being there. Elon Musk actually ran Donald Trump's cabinet meeting the other day, more or less. But there are a lot of Republicans who say this guy is not good for us. This guy is saying things that are going to hurt us. But back to your math question, it is impossible math unless you have an adult conversation about everything, but the entitlement programs, as they call them, not Ponzi schemes, commitments. They're called commitments to poor Americans and older Americans. That's where all the money is.
But is Social Security? I think it still is the third rail. I mean, I think if people start discovering that Elon Musk and Donald Trump want to reduce their Social Security checks after they're well into their retirement, that would be a big problem.
Trump has consistently said he will not do it. Right. And so he has consistently said it, and he deserves credit for that. Again, the math of his own budget doesn't work, which is why you started this, Jim, by saying they're only frameworks. Remember that. They're only frameworks. It was a big step for the House Speaker to be able to get that framework passed, and that's hard leadership to get that passed. Whether you agree, I know a lot of people disagree with the policy in it, the idea of what become necessary. But it was hard for him politically to get that done. However, that is the first and the easiest of a number of incredibly hard steps they're going to have to take to make that math work. And it all circles back to also what you said at the beginning about Donald Trump in a rush. Donald Trump is in a rush because he remembers the first time. He had a 2-year presidency. Yeah. And Nancy Pelosi was elected speaker. The Democrats took the House and Nancy Pelosi was elected speaker. He's in a rush because he remembers. And he's trying to get it all done just in case.
Before you go, I'm sure I ask this every year and I'm embarrassed I don't remember. Do you go to spring training?
I have never been to spring training.
No.
I've never been to Red Sox spring training. I've been to Arizona several times, and I went to a Red Sox Cub game one year when they were opening the season in Los Angeles, so they finished spring training out in Arizona. But I've never been either to where did it used to be? Now it's at JetBlue Park, but it used to be in, that's how.
I don't remember. Why don't you go? Quickly, why don't you go?
Work. Crazy. That's nuts, right?
It's not good enough answer. Go ahead. What?
My son is actually going to be there. He's going down. He's in the 8th grade, but he's been invited to go with the junior varsity baseball team.
Oh, my God.
His spring break for some practice and drills and scrimmage games down there. And it's not all that far away. So this could be the year I figure something out.
Let us know. I'd do it, John. Take a day off. John King, it's great to talk to you as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you, John King. Good luck tonight.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
We have been talking with John King, CNN's chief national correspondent. And, of course, the president's speech is going to start at 9 o'clock tonight. And you'll have to stay up probably late to see the fact-checking because you can't really believe him when he talks. Coming up after a quick break, we've been getting out our fair share of swearing off-air the past few years, or weeks, I should say. Now there's research out that shows it's good to swear for pain management. It's kind of a casual thing that more and more people do, even the worst words we weren't ever supposed to say. We're going to open the lines to ask you about your relationship with swearing. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, President Trump is set to make the first congressional address of his new term, and the Massachusetts delegation is inviting guests who were meant to send a message. And transportation advocates are pushing back on Boston's move to get rid of the Boylston Street bus lane. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Simmons Leadership Conference, a one-day event featuring keynote speakers including Brooke Shields, Cint Marshall, and Jessica O. Matthews. Thursday, March 20th, in person in Boston and online. InclusiveLeadership.com. And Concord Park, a Volunteers of America senior community in Concord, offering wellness, care, and support services to help seniors age in place, including a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. ConcordPark.org/care.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, special coverage starting at 10, then continue with us at 11 of Mayor Wu testifying before that congressional committee. 1 o'clock tomorrow at the library. The Attorney General joins us for Ask the Attorney General. Next Tuesday at the library, 11 to 12, is the mayor, who just testified tomorrow at that hearing. And Wednesday, 11 to 12, is the governor. Tuesday, the mayor. Wednesday, the governor. Next week at the library. So screw the self-help books. Here on Boston Public Radio, we have the drug-free, calorie-neutral, cost-free means of self-help, dropping a perfectly timed, emotionally profound F-bomb. Not on the air, by the way. Don't just take my word for it. We read research this morning. Although I can attest to the pain-relieving properties of a good profanity-laden exhale, research by actual scientists, Marjorie, is proving what we've already known forever. Swearing increases your pain tolerance, it increases your strength, and I would argue it provides psychological relief in stressful situations. So for the rest of the show at 877-301-8970, we want to get where you are on swearing. Are you offended by it? Are you a practitioner who benefits by it? And also, how do you feel about swear substitutes? Like darn, which drives me, or frickin'. I mean,
I
really,
like frickin'.
It gives me like hives.
What's the matter with frickin'?
I don't like it.
Okay.
877-301-8970. Where are you on swearing? Let me just give you a little proof of this scientist thing. They've been studying the effects of swearing on pain tolerance since 2009. Listen to this. They have participants stick their hands in ice water for as long as possible. Some people are asked to repeat swear words over and over while their hands in the water. Others repeat a non-swear word, and the results are clear. Swearing is associated with not only increased pain tolerance, but a decrease in the pain we actually register in our own body. So that is a given and a plus.
Well, it's almost an instinct. If you cut yourself or hurt yourself, I think a lot of people swear when they do something like that. It's
even you.
Yeah. Well, I don't swear as much as you. And if swearing is so good for you, I would wonder why there aren't more improvements. You know.
Can you imagine what I'd be like without it?
Psychological, sort of calmness and.
Do you not feel it gives you psychological relief when you're in a tough kind of situation? It does for me.
Some kind of sudden upset, like you ran the car or you knocked something over or you get pain. Yeah, I think people.
Did you curse when you rear-ended that car on the highway? I'm not supposed to say rear-ended. Sorry. Yeah. Well, when that other car hit you, did you curse? Obviously,
well,
he did.
Jim Browdy, you have rear-ended several people.
I have.
So were you cursing when you?
I was cursing before I rear-ended them. So why would I?
I mean, the thing is, when every adjective is the F word, it's a little much. It's like a little much. You don't have to have.
Yeah, but we're also. I agree with that, even though I know I do it too much. But can I say the flip side?
What?
Our Puritanism, is that the right word? I'm not sure it's the right word. The fact that we can't do this here, but you can do it on cable TV, that's how people talk.
Can you do it on cable TV?
Yeah, you can do it on cable
I didn't
TV.
know that.
A lot of those shows. I mean, what are you talking about? Don't you watch?
I thought only some of them.
No. What do they say? Only on HBO, on Max you can do it, but you can't do it on.
I didn't think you could do it like on CNN.
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They choose not to because it's a news thing.
Okay.
But I have to say.
So why do they choose not to?
Because they think they're going to offend. They have mostly older listeners, and I would argue, I don't have data for this, but I think it's true. Older people are much more offended by foul language than younger people are.
Because in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I think you were raised not to swear as much, and now the kids are swearing and little toddlers. We know one that swears all the time. We shouldn't be picking on
Do we have
Jamie
that sound?
today.
Or we can't even play that sound. We have sound.
Yeah.
Your
save
kid's
it.
going to hate you for that someday, or love you for it. I don't know.
But of course, why are the toddlers swearing? Because they hear their parents swearing. Isn't that why they're doing it?
Of course it is.
Yeah, that's why they're doing it.
And let me just say
that's
something.
the other thing that's interesting.
What is it?
Is that you can swear all the time at work, and you do. But I don't know if you swore like that when your kids were like 4 and 5 years old in front of your kids. Did you?
Huh?
Okay, you did.
I may have.
'Cause I thought that was amazing how I can swear at work. I don't swear as much as you, but I do swear. But I managed not to do it in front of my
Well, the
children.
fact you can turn it, I mean, I'm saying
Turn it
this
on and off.
to our team and you this morning. I do, and by the way, I do it too much. I know that, so you don't have to, I mean, you've criticized me 12 times for it already, but you're right. It's too much. But we've been on the air 26 years together, plus a little time on NECN. Once I've slipped in 26 years and dropped an F-bomb on the air, and I can't remember what it was about. Isn't that amazing that your brain works in such a way that you know when to turn certain things off? But I guess what I'm saying is it's unnatural to turn. You know why this show succeeds, if I may? Marjorie's not going to like this because you can never say a good thing about us. You know why it succeeds?
Why?
Because this is a real conversation.
Real conversation.
This is not... You're hopeless. I'm not even going to continue.
Lisa in Haverhill says, if not for swearing, I would self-combust, especially under the current regime.
Good for her. I'm with her.
And Marty in New Hampshire says, I am self-diagnosed with a kind of Tourette syndrome that only uses the F word. It started on November 6th.
Same
so
point.
there you go.
It's Marty
So
in
there's
New
a lot
Hampshire.
of people that are feeling very stressful in this particular moment, Jim.
Okay, 877-301-8097. And I really would, because Marjorie and I disagree on one part of this. When I hear somebody on the radio who is a normal person say that darn thing, who says darn? Who in a normal conversation
You don't,
says
but
darn?
you say it if you're, well, I think you can say, can't you say damn?
We say damn here all the time,
I
but a lot of people
some
think you shouldn't
words
do
are
it.
okay, hell, damn, a couple of them are okay. Then you get into more
Remember what
gray
Mitt Romney
areas.
said instead of hell? H-E double hockey sticks.
I know, that was unbelievable. That was unbelievable.
He did, by
drank
the way.
vanilla Coke.
He did. Well, he's a Mormon. He's a
Mormon,
serious Mormon. There's nothing
Okay,
wrong with
Brian
that.
from Paxton. I'm a devout Catholic, pretty straight-laced, but really a really great F-bomb when you're ticked off is just amazing.
It is so cathartic.
Yep.
It isn't good for that person. Let's go to Faye in Hamilton. You are first on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Faye, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
We're excellent.
Well, I have to say, since the election, I start every morning face down in my bed, and I curse for a good 5 to 10 minutes using the worst things I can possibly say.
You know how to live,
because
Faye.
If I didn't, I would explode. So,
That is a beautiful piece of advice for people who are suffering stress. I think it's a great way to start your day, Faye, and thanks for sharing. Jill in
Listen
the
to
car
this.
says, I knew it all along. I'm a pro at it, and I'm in great health. So the science proves her point.
Here's Chris in Rosendale. I used to swear like a pirate with my friends. Now that I have kids around, I say stuff like sugar and fluffer and jeezum. I can't stop even when not around the kids, and now I have lost all my street cred with my friends.
877-301-8970.
That's the other problem. If you start using the expressions you use with your children around adults, that doesn't work.
Wait, what's that again?
If
You mean ceasing like sugar?
Yeah, if you use those kind. Well,
Yeah.
like you said, like, double H hockey sticks.
Did you
whatever
curse
they
in front of
call
your kids when they were little?
I tried really hard not to.
You also didn't smoke marijuana in front of them, you said. Even when it was legal. Even when it was legal, you said. And they were grown.
Well, because.
Because what?
Because I'm their mother, Jim. I'm
Oh,
trying to
God.
set an example, sort of, in some little way.
Sean in the car. Well, no, wait. Sean in the car nailed this. The F-bomb is the Q-tip of words. If you're a long-time listener, you know what Q-tips mean to at least one of us.
That's right.
And that is, you nailed it, Sean.
Jim has
that
a
was
fondness
beautiful.
for Q-tips, and I think you have a fondness for the F-bomb as well.
You know what the term a listener taught us? Do you
What?
remember last time we
What?
did Q-tips?
What?
Eargasm. Did you? Which really
Eargasm.
is perfect. Well done, Sean.
Annie in Gardner, thank you for calling.
Hey, Annie.
Hey, great topic.
Thank you.
So I was raised by a British sailor, so I've been cussing my entire life.
Oh, God.
Including some good British cusses, which aren't considered cussing up here. But when I had kids, I really needed to clean up my language. So I invented a swear that has the same mouthfeel and psychological benefit of a lot of our favorite
This
swear
is brilliant.
words. But that is not a swear word, in fact. And the word invented is fudge on a chicken stick.
I like your
Fudge
style
on
there.
a chicken stick.
That's good, Annie.
And I would yell it at bad drivers that cut me off. But over time, my little kids would say, when they were frustrated, that my son would say, "Fudge on a chicken stick, Mommy."
I love that. That is brilliant and
one.
creative, Annie.
It worked.
Thank you for the call. Rebecca in Florida has an interesting point.
Yeah.
She says, what's this nonsense about not being allowed to swear on Boston Public Radio? All I hear on your show is big balls, who is or is not an a-hole, and endless allusions to dickies. It's a different kind of
That's
dickie
pretty
there,
good.
Rebecca.
Yeah, it's a dickie that you wear.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I
a
get her
boy's
point,
little
though.
kind of mock turtleneck is what
Whatever
it
it
is.
is.
But a lot of people did complain. I think they've given up at the beginning
A-hole
of our
thing?
Who is the A-hole. Yeah, they were very upset and offended that we were talking about
And
A-holes.
you gave in, which really I meant to tell you, that drove me
I
nuts.
gave in. Yep,
you
I
started
folded.
saying jerk. Be proud of what you do, Marjorie, okay?
Thank you, Jim.
If you say
I'll
a-hole,
try to
say
keep
it
that in
loud
mind.
and say it proud,
Okay.
Marjorie, okay?
The day after Trump's election, our instructor in class at the gym gave us all permission at the end to scream the F word. We actually did it twice. That's Rebecca from Boston.
Well, you know, primal scream stuff. And didn't we have that woman on who had people screaming in the suburbs a year or so ago? That's not screaming curse words, is it? It's just screaming? Is that what it is? I don't know what it is. Ellen in Cambridge, what's your deal? Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, I just wanted to say that I am 85 years old.
That's great.
And I love just coming out with OF in very appropriate
It's beautiful.
settings, political situations.
That's beautiful.
Especially, it helps diffuse tension.
Can I tell you something?
I mean,
You're
both mine and
85.
everybody
You could
around
live to
me.
110 if you keep doing that, Ellen. That's my view. That's what keeps
what
you
I'm
young,
thinking.
right? Exactly.
Ellen, thank you for
Ellen,
the
thanks
call.
for the call. We appreciate it.
Years ago, my mother was driving me to the hospital. I was in extreme pain. I kept using all the medium swears. At one point, Mom reached over, patted my knee, and said, "You can say the F-bomb if you need to." And I think it was the first time she ever used that word. Glad to know I didn't just imagine that it helped. Martha from Acton.
That's pretty good. Do you know who Reverend Irene Monroe is?
Yes.
She just texted. Do you want to read that?
Jesus cussed, and I do too. In the Bible, Jesus overturned tables in the temple to drive out money changers and merchants who were selling animals. He said the temple should be a place of prayer, not a den of thieves. He was cussing while turning the tables.
Well, there you go.
I didn't know if he was using the F-bombs or maybe the appropriate cuss at that particular
that
juncture.
period of time, right.
The year 33 or 31 or whatever it was.
It's good enough for Jesus.
Yeah.
It's good enough for me.
Thank you very much, Irene.
Let's go to Jen in Sagamore Beach. How are you?
Hey, friend.
Hi.
Timely segment. I literally just bought a red baseball hat with big white letters that read Foxtrot, Delta, Tango.
Oh, you know what that means? Those are two of those initials are for a guy who's giving a speech tonight at 9 o'clock. Is that correct, Jen?
Boom.
Boom.
Foxtrot, Delta.
FDT. Figured out. I'm not, please.
Oh, okay. I got
Oh,
it.
my
A little
God.
slow in the uptake there.
Jen, send Marjorie one of those. Thanks for your call. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. 877-301-8097. Do you know that there is somebody on the payroll, I think in Massachusetts too, whose sole job is to monitor specialty license plate requests to make sure there's not some subliminal curse word in the license plate thing, and you can get rejected if you do something like that, I guess, is the point. Boy, that really interested Marjorie.
I know. Well, that's because I saw this great text, Jim.
What's that?
From Kelly in Rhode Island.
What'd she say? Or he?
Shouting Dickie is a great stress reliever.
That's funny. That's really,
well.
That is
Yeah.
sad.
Remember years ago when Vagina Model Eyes came to town? We just stand up in the middle of the room and start screaming.
No, stop we.
Yeah.
Marjorie and I were invited to, we had, what was her name? Eve Ensler.
Eve Ensler, who wrote
The Vagina Monologues.
Yep.
We've had her on since. She's
Yep.
done some great things. There are, and I'm not exaggerating. I think you invited me because it was a media thing, and we go to this thing.
Because we were having her on the radio.
Oh, that's right.
why.
That's what it was. 600 people at this thing. On my honor, this is true. How many men were in the audience?
I would say you might have been the only one.
The only man.
And you're tall.
600 people, and I was tall. And if you haven't seen the Vagina Monologues, part of the deal is it's an interactive thing with the audience in which you not only have to yell the F word, which I am totally fine with, you have to yell the C word. So there is a 6'5" man in a room with 599 women plus Eve Ensler.
Yeah.
That was really a tough one, I have to say.
Yeah, that was really a tough one.
I sort of whispered it. I mouthed it.
Yeah, it was a tense moment for everybody there because people felt really funny about doing it, very awkward.
Here's a great question for Irene from an anonymous texter. Do you think they said, "Oh, Jesus," in 33 AD? That's a great text.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Yeah. Maria, Marla from Sterling.
Marla.
Sorry.
Hi, Marla.
Hi,
Welcome.
Marla.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for letting me call you in. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just the phone number again. I feel like I've called you a lot lately.
Well,
That's okay. We're glad you do. Yeah.
But anyhow, I swear all the time now that somebody has come into office. The orange guy.
We know who he is.
Yes. And on TV, whenever he's on, I put my fingers in and I go, whoa.
Marla, does that help you? The connection's bad, so I'm going to ask you quickly. Does that help you to do it?
Yes, it does.
Well, it's good to hear, Marla. Thank you for the call. By the way, I want to play a little bit. One of the most famous comedy bits by one of the most famous comedians who ever lived, George Carlin, obviously, is no longer with us.
Yeah.
He did this, for young listeners who don't know it, this infamous stand-up routine about the 7 dirty words that you can't say. I think on the radio, he said, maybe television, I don't know. And it's edited for time and language, but here is Carlin.
We have more ways to describe dirty words than we actually have dirty words. That seems a little strange to me. They call them bad words, dirty, filthy, foul, vile, vulgar, rude, crude, lewd, lascivious, indecent, profane, blue, off color, cursing, cussing, swearing, and all I could think of was
He says the 7 words that you can't say in his routine. It was pretty great.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Jeff in Kittery, Maine says, I'm a notorious potty mouth, but I find Jim's use of the term banana hammock unconscionable.
There you go.
A banana hammock is a banana hammock. Dave in a car, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling in, Dave. Hi.
Hey, guys.
Hey. Did I wake you or what?
I just wanted to say...
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I was going to back into my spot.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, my wife is very educated, and she always says things like, you shouldn't cuss so much. You should try to use big boy words to make it so that you don't just cuss all the time and try to outsmart people. And I'll tell you what, my grandfather was a sailor. I was a former chef. I swear all the time. But I'll tell you, ever since this election, my wife swears more than I do.
Oh, that is a beautiful, beautiful story,
That's
Dave.
great.
Thank you. By the way, he reminds me of something. The historical criticism of those who swear too much, like me, is it is an easy way for people who don't have good command of the language to speak. If they did, they wouldn't have to use those words. That thing we read this morning, again, scientists,
the opposite.
More creativity, generally smarter, that sort of thing.
Yes, cursing may be a sign of intelligence. It may be a sign of honesty. Pain tolerance, we already talked about that. And as you said, creativity and throwing expletives instead of punches is another
That's another
reason.
good point.
Listen to this one.
Please.
This is from you in Concord. My daughter at 1 year old started to drop F-bombs out of the blue in the car when I was driving her, much to my surprise. Well, it turned out my wife had been dropping F-bombs while driving, so the kid heard Mom say it and thought it was okay to say it with Dad as well. We had to tread very carefully after that and did not react to her outburst, which she soon stopped. That's one of the fears of parents, is that you're going to swear at home and your kid is going to show up at daycare
and they're going to know it's because of you.
And it's going to be F this, S that.
Exactly.
That's not...
Well, I've told you this story.
You don't want that...
a bunch of people in my family were all in the Cape together, and there's an 18-month-old kid there. I'm not going to say the word. You know the story.
No, the 18-month-old kid?
Yeah, the 18-month-old kid there is walking along. He's got a T-shirt on. We're all sitting on a couch watching the sunset over Cape Cod Bay, and we're watching the sunset. The little kid walks across. He has no pants or diaper on, and he's got a T-shirt, and he stops right in the middle of our view, and he poops on the floor.
Oh!
And he poops on the floor. He turns to all the adults, 18 months old, and he goes, "O-F." and he says the whole word. It's an 18. I've told you this story before.
I don't remember this one.
Yeah, it was
That's
one
a little
of the
disturbing.
It was a little disturbing. Well, considering the source.
How's the kid now? Okay. Okay.
Let's put it this way. What was the name of the guy who went to prison, who had the ostrich jackets, who worked for Trump? What's his name? Begins with an M.
Oh, Manafort? Paul Manafort?
He was one of his lawyers.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
sad
there
day.
you go, Jim. That was an early sign of trouble.
It was. Adele in Providence, welcome to the show. Hi, Adele. Thanks for calling. Welcome.
Hi. This is just a quick one, but when I say the S word, my dogs totally understand that there's something wrong and they go in the other room.
That's pretty good. I like
want you to know.
that. I like that a lot, actually. Thanks for that.
Shalini from Lexington says, Freud said civilization began when man hurled a swear instead of a spear. I don't like that.
Did he say that, or is that made up?
I don't know. I've never. How do I
Jamie,
know? This is
help
what
us out.
Shalini
Please,
from
thank you.
Lexington says. Carrie from Littleton. Hi. Thanks for calling.
Hello, Carrie.
Oh, hi. I'm so excited that this is the subject. I love you both.
Thank
I've
you.
never called in. I've wanted to, but I was
Never.
so excited about this particular topic. I
Great.
had to.
Please.
So here I am, and I'm a little bit nervous because it is the first call
It's
ever.
okay.
But there's several points I want to make.
Please.
But the biggest one that I want to make is it's always astonished me how, swears are so frowned upon in our society. But yet people can be, and it fits very well with the state of things these days, people can be just filled with vitriolic speech, and people can be liars and con men and violent, and it's like anyone can say anything. But as soon as somebody swears,
I'm so with you.
everyone's shocked, and they look at them, like potty mouth. And especially, and I don't think you've touched on this yet today, but especially when you're a woman, right? Because it's especially unladylike and vulgar if you're a woman. And it's just appalling to me. And the same with on TV. The stuff that can be shown on TV and in all the media, and everyone's okay with that, but don't swear.
I'm with you. That is beautiful. By the way, it's not women are frowned upon to do it unless they're from Fall River, Curry. I just want to correct you.
That's right.
Thank you very much for the call. This is a good one from Ben in Peabody. The Virgin Mary was going to name her son Mark until she stubbed her toe. That's another good one.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, really? Thank you for explaining that
I just
to
wanted
us.
to make sure everybody got it.
Okay,
I
I think
step
we know.
in
I
just
think we know.
to cover
So
our
what do you
bases.
think the consensus is? Because we got to talk to Jared. We don't have to talk to Jared. We want
I think the
to
consensus
talk
is
to
people
Jared.
don't think swearing is a big deal
But which is
anymore.
a change. We've done this from time to time on the show.
Although somebody said, they texted a little while ago, they were offended with David Ortiz talking about Boston being our effing city after the marathon bombing.
Are you serious?
That's what they said. They were offended.
That
So
was
there you go.
totally heartfelt and moving and incredible.
Well, I'm just reading you the text, Jim.
Well, they're
Don't take it
wrong.
out on me.
Now, we often have to guess what Jared's thing is, but you know what Jared's nickname is at the station? Jared the Sailor Bowen. So we know what kind of language. You're really a foul-mouthed kind of guy. Is that a fair thing to say?
Marjorie, am I a foul-mouthed kind of guy?
I would say no.
No, I was thinking Jimmy's trying to throw me under the bus here.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
at
would
all.
say no.
Well,
No.
that's not true. Sometimes. I think it's great for punctuation. I love when I'm in a situation where somebody I don't expect at all drops an F-bomb. I love that.
I love that too. That is really good. That is really. Actually, it's interesting. My younger daughter has a really foul mouth. I love her to death. My older daughter almost never curses, both in their 30s. And whenever my older daughter does that, I have the exact same reaction that you had, Jared. It's really special.
Listen to this
you know what I
one.
mean? Well,
listen
in
to
a
this
weird
one.
way, I guess it's special. Go ahead.
Once on Thanksgiving Day, when I was 6 years old, I proclaimed to my aunt very loudly while we were all silent, "This is great effing gravy."
How old was the person?
6.
That is great.
6.
That's exactly what Jared's talking about.
Yeah. When I was 6, this is a family story. I don't remember it, and maybe you'll understand why at the end of the story. I'll make it quick that my father does not abide by swearing whatsoever. I've sworn maybe once in my entire life in front of him, but apparently I did that as a 6-year-old. I dropped the F-bomb just randomly, and he chased me, and I was looking at him the entire time and ran smack dab into the house and knocked myself down.
Wow.
Yeah, well, a lot of parents really didn't like it. And I think that was because they were afraid their kids would do it in school and then that would reflect so poorly on them, right? Isn't that part of it?
Probably.
I think.
yeah.
Okay, so what are you doing
What's on the
there?
show?
So we're going to be talking to Reginald Dwayne Betts. He is the poet. He founded Freedom Reads, which puts books and libraries into prisons. He has prisons, I should say. He has a new book out. I'm laughing because we did tape the interview yesterday, and we had to do a little editing because now I'm reminding myself that all of a sudden he dropped an F-bomb in the middle of the interview.
I love that.
Which is one of the first times that's happened. The book is called Doggerel. It's fabulous. And then we're talking to Margaret Cho.
Speaking of F-bombs, by the way.
Yeah.
And
she is brilliant.
And she's also live and livid. That's what she's calling her show as she's touring
She's
right now.
fabulous.
She's coming to the Wilbur. And we'll look at the VinFen Film Festival, which addresses the stigmas of mental health and disabilities all through films, short films, feature-length
great.
films. They have panel discussions. We'll talk about it all.
Fabulous. Wow,
Jared,
that's
thank
a hell
you.
of a show. Good to see you there,
Thank
Jared.
you very
Take
much,
care.
Jared.
Good to see you.
Thanks. That was Jared Bowen's show.
was.
He's going to be on. The Culture Show is going to be on as soon as we're done here at 89.7 GBH. No news, just straight to Jared and the show. Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to people that came down to the Boston Public Library. We really appreciate that. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we'll be back here at the library bringing you coverage of Mayor Wu's hearing in Congress, where she's going to be grilled about immigration policies in Boston, and we're going to have analysis from retired federal judge Nancy Gertner about what's going on with Trump and the law and alleged illegalities about firings, etc.
And also, Adam Riley's going to be in the room.
That's right.
Whenever there's a
That's
break,
right.
we're
Thank
going to
you.
talk to Adam for being inside. Yep.
Which we're so happy about. The NAACP's Michael Curry is going to join us as well. Plus, Attorney General Andrea Campbell joins us from 1 to 2 for another edition of Ask the AG, when she'll be taking our questions and yours. We want to thank our crew: Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Tamsin Vidal. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked /1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.